The Cost of Lies. The Amish Bonnet Sisters, Book 13. Written by Samantha Price. Narrated by Stephanie Dillard. Chapter 1. Florence looked on in horror as the paramedics placed an oxygen mask over Levi's face. Dark gray clouds with fluffy white edges swept across the sky. They hovered, forming a canopy of gloom. Wilma's faint sobs were interspersed with the yips from a barking dog within the house. A hush of silence fell over the dozen or so onlookers as the paramedics either side of Levi slid a sheet underneath him. Once they had it in place, they coordinated their movements and lifted him onto a stretcher. With a sudden gust of wind, a door inside the house slammed shut. Everyone jumped at the sound. Levi was breathing smoothly now, thanks to the oxygen mask. But was he going to die? No one had told them anything. When they wheeled Levi to the ambulance, Carter hurried to talk to the paramedics. He wouldn't have wanted to ask them difficult questions in front of Wilma. After giving Wilma sympathetic looks, the strangers headed down the driveway on foot. It all seemed like a dream. Florence hugged her baby to herself. Iris was growing heavy since she'd just carried her from the cottage to the fence line, through the Baker apple orchard, and all the way to the front of her old home. Minutes ago, when Florence had arrived, a woman was reviving Levi. Florence assumed she was a customer of the shop. The paramedics had commended her on what she'd done. Wilma sobbed as she watched her second husband slipping away from life's grip. Was her stepmother about to lose a second husband? Florence said a silent prayer for Levi. He was too young to die, and her stepmother was too young to be a second-time widow. Wilma would fall apart. The apple orchard wasn't even a consideration at this moment, as Florence's gaze traveled to Bliss. She had hope on one side of her and favor on the other, stroking her arms and speaking words of encouragement as she helplessly looked after her father. Caroline, the girls' Englisher visitor, stood behind them, shocked and concerned. Florence took a couple of steps back, and Carter returned. "Want me to take her?" "Please, she's heavy." He took Iris, and she snuggled into his shoulder and didn't wake. Then Wilma spoke. "Hope, hitch the buggy and drive over to Joy and tell her what happened. I don't want her to worry, but she needs to know. Then before that, can you tell Adaa to come watch the girls? I'll go to the hospital." Carter overheard. "I can do that, Wilma. If you give me the address, I can drive there and tell Joy. Then I can tell Adaa what happened. It'll be much quicker." "Yeah, would you?" "Of course." One of the paramedics asked Wilma, "Would you like to travel with us in the ambulance?" Wilma looked at Bliss. "You go with him. I'll go to the hospital some other way." "Okay." Bliss's bottom lip trembled and she'd gone white. "I can drive you," Carter offered Wilma. "I can take you. It's on my way." Wilma looked at the woman who'd made the kind offer. She was the one who had performed CPR. "That would be wonderful if you don't mind." The woman held out her hand. "I don't mind at all. I'm Barbara." "Thank you for all you've done for my husband, Barbara." "I'm Wilma." "You're welcome. All in a day's work." The woman smiled kindly. "The car's down on the road." "Hope, let everybody know what's happened, and tell the bishop so he can arrange everyone to pray." "I will." "I hope he's okay, Wilma," Florence said. "Me too." Florence stepped forward and hugged Wilma before her stepmother walked away with Barbara. Barbara looped her arm through Wilma's. Florence wiped a tear from her eye. Wilma looked so small and so fragile as she clung onto Barbara as though she would fall at any moment. There were only a few of them left when the ambulance drove away. "I can't believe this just happened," said Favor. Cherish agreed. "Me either." "I better call Adaa. Mom wants her to come here." Carter looked at Florence. "I'll bring Adaa here." "There's no hurry," Cherish assured him. "We'll drive her back here, and we'll tell Joy." "And Christina," Florence added. Cherish rubbed her head as confusion set in. "What are you going to do now?" Florence told her. "Carter and I are going to tell Adaa what happened. You heard Mom. She wants her to come here and look after you girls." "I can't see why. We're all adults, as good as grown up. We're not little children." "Perhaps Mom will feel better if she knows Ada's here. It'll give her some peace of mind." "Whose side are you on?" "No one's. We're just trying to help out." When Carter and Florence left, Cherish stepped in front of Caroline and Favor as they were walking to the house. "Things are going to be in a mess around here for a while, Caroline." Caroline looked up at her. "Yeah, I can see that. It might be a good time for you to leave." "Cherish, that's not very nice," said Favor. "She can come back when everything's back to normal. I don't see that it's rude. I mean, who knows what could happen with Levi?" "Nothing will happen." "Yeah, well, we never thought anything would happen with our Dot either." "Don't be a negative Nelly, Cherish." Caroline abruptly turned away, causing her long hair to brush across Cherish's face. Cherish was annoyed with Caroline, but couldn't help admiring how she had flicked her hair like that just now. If only she could do that, but she couldn't with her hair restricted by the prayer cup. Favor and Caroline stepped past her and walked into the house. When she turned around, she saw Hope just standing there. "Are you okay, Hope?" "I guess. This is so awful." "I know. Please try to get along with Caroline. It's dreadful when there's arguing all the time." "I just want to know why she's still here. She lied about her house burning down. We all know it. Probably even Mom knows it." "It's not your concern, Cherish. Stop worrying about what other people are doing and take a look at yourself." Hope stomped past her. "Rude!" Cherish brushed off Hope's remark. She was just upset. She didn't mean it. Looking around, Cherish didn't know what to do with herself. Then she decided to go back to the shop. Everybody, including the customers, had run out of the shop when they heard her scream. She was the one who'd found Levi on the ground. Why hadn't he just stayed inside on the couch where he'd been resting? Where had he been going? She'd gone to get more change from the house. Nearly everyone had paid them with 50s today. Levi, his face looking gray, had been sprawled out on the ground between the house and the barn, and he couldn't speak. Once the crowd had gathered, one woman pushed them all aside, saying she was a nurse. Cherish thanked God that someone with medical knowledge had been right there buying apples. What were the chances of that? As Cherish dragged her feet down the driveway, she had a dreadful thought. What if some dreadful, dishonest person had stolen the takings in the midst of all the confusion? Chapter 2. Fearing someone might have stolen the day's takings, Cherish sped up and all but burst through the open doorway of the deserted shop. She pulled out the money drawer, and to her relief, there was a pile of money. Looking around at the shelves, it seemed like not one thing had been taken. Cherish bundled up the notes and stuffed them into the money bag. Then she grabbed the key off the hook, stepped outside, and locked the door behind herself. As she walked back up the driveway to the house, she silently prayed again that Levi would be okay. He did have a good side, she had found out, and it couldn't have been easy living with Wilma. Then he'd found out that Wilma had hidden her previous husband's will from everyone. It was a betrayal of the worst kind, and that shock might have been enough to kill Levi. Cherish hoped that it wouldn't. If it did, then Wilma would only have herself to blame. Cherish entered the house and passed Favor, Hope, and Caroline, who were huddled in the living room, and then put the money bag in the top cupboard of the kitchen. Then she sat down next to Favor. "What will happen if Levi dies?" Cherish asked. "Don't even think about it," said Hope. "We have to pray and leave it in God's hands." "That's the last thing that I want. Mom will be awfully upset if that happens. She'll be a mess. She'll never recover. First Dot, and now Levi." Favor wiped a tear from her eye.
It might happen. Stop it, Cherish.
Favor buried her head in her hands and sobbed.
Sorry.
Cherish put her arm around her, but then she was bumped into by Caroline, who had decided at that very moment to also put her arm around Favor's shoulder. Caroline was taking over her sister. Cherish removed her arm and flicked her prayer cup strings over her shoulders. Cherish pressed her lips together. Everyone was silent. Cherish hated that. Someone should talk to fill in the silence. What would become of the orchard and the house if Levi died? Cherish wanted to know, but she'd get told to be quiet if she raised the question. "Do you think he'll make a full recovery?" Hope asked, and then answered her own question. "I suppose it depends on what's wrong with him." Nobody commented, and all went quiet yet again. Cherish studied everyone. Hope, looking at the ceiling, with her hands clutched firmly in her lap. Favor's head was lowered, looking at the dark swirling patterns in the rug. Caroline looked concerned, most likely faking it since she didn't truly know Levi, and her fingers were stroking her long, honey-colored hair. Caroline was so attractive. Cherish knew she could be just as pretty if she could have her long hair out, cascading down her back like a wavy waterfall. Caroline wore makeup, too, and Cherish considered anyone could look good if they were allowed to put that much paint on their face. Sadly, she wasn't allowed to wear even a lick of makeup. Looking good or wanting to look good was prideful. That's why Cherish kept her thoughts to herself. She didn't want to add being prideful to the list of things her mother had against her. Caroline stopped touching her hair, at last.
Poor Levi. I hope he's not in pain. Me too, but they'd give him painkillers, Cherish said.
Then everyone was silent again. In the beginning, Cherish wasn't happy with the way Levi treated her mother and her sisters, but they had all grown used to him and his funny ways. Lately, he'd been nice to Cherish, had given her responsibility. He even trusted her, which is more than her mother had ever done. Cherish wiped a tear from her eye, knowing she'd miss him if he didn't come home.
Are you going to go home now, Caroline? Would you stop trying to get rid of me, Cherish? Favor needs me now more than ever.
Favor scowled at Cherish.
That's the second time you've said that today. Just asking.
Cherish watched Caroline put her arm around Favor once again, and was annoyed. She wanted to be the one to comfort her sister.
I'm not getting rid of you. I was hoping you would stay. Oh, really? I'm sorry I snapped at you then. I took what you said the wrong way. That's okay.
Cherish smiled and then looked over at Hope. By the look on Hope's face, it was clear she knew that Cherish did want Caroline to go home.
Did you tell Fairfax what happened?
Hope shook her head. I tried to call him a couple of times, but I couldn't get through. The line was busy.
As soon as Adaa finds out, she'll tell everybody. It won't be long before he hears of it.
Hope nodded. I feel sorry for Bliss.
We all do,
said Caroline, now patting Hope's shoulder. Cherish stared at Caroline, and then realized Favor's pen pal was an only child, and that was why she wanted to stay. She'd probably always longed to have sisters and be a part of a large family. With her parents leaving her alone most of every day, coming to their house was a complete change. With that new outlook, Cherish made up her mind to be nicer to Caroline. At least, she'd try. Chapter 3. An hour later, a car pulled up in the driveway, and Cherish had a bad feeling. She went out to see what other disaster had happened. It was Carter's car, and Adaa was getting out of the passenger side. Carter quickly moved to get 2 large bags out of the trunk. That was the moment when Cherish realized she'd been right. It was a disaster. Adaa was moving in, and going by the bags, she was staying for a long time. Cherish stepped back when Adaa approached the front door with Carter trailing behind her, carrying the bags.
You're staying? She asked Adaa. Of course I am. We don't know how long he'll be at the hospital, and if your mother wants me to help out, then that's exactly what I'll do.
Cherish wasn't going to argue. Not with Adaa. Where should I put these, Cherish? Carter nodded to the bags.
There's a spare room at the back. I'll show you. That's the one I like, Adaa said. I don't want to go up and down the stairs. Just through here, Cherish said to Carter.
Sure thing. When Cherish walked down the hallway, she heard Adaa talking to the girls in the living room, most likely organizing them to do chores. It was late in the day, and soon it'd be dark.
Now I have to make up the bed,
Cherish grumbled, after she lifted up the quilt to see no sheets. He chuckled. Would you like me to help?
No, that's all right. You go home and look after Florence and Iris.
He placed the bags by the window. I suppose you haven't heard how Levi is?
I haven't heard a word.
It must be stressful for all of you, particularly Wilma.
And Bliss.
Of course, Levi's daughter.
And his only child.
If there's anything you need, call me, won't you?
Sure, but I don't think there'll be anything. But I will let you know.
And keep us updated, please.
I will.
I told Joy. Isaac wasn't home. She said she'd be over here, and she was leaving a note for him. I offered to drive her, but she wouldn't hear of it.
Thank you for everything.
Adaa and I told Christina, too, on the way back. I think that's everyone.
Earl!
Florence will call him.
Good.
Cherish stared at Ada's 2 large suitcases.
It can't have taken Adaa a long time to pack those bags if you had time to make all those stops.
No, it didn't. She was ready in 5 minutes flat. He rubbed the back of his neck. Was Levi ill before he took a turn?
I don't know. He wasn't feeling too well. He said he was tired. Before that, he had a bad back or something like that. I feel awful that I didn't take much notice. I certainly didn't expect this to happen. No one did.
I suppose so. Well, I'll leave you to the bed-making.
Thanks, Carter.
She followed him out and then waited at the door and watched him drive away before walking back to put sheets on the guest bed. She heard the girls in the kitchen with Adaa. Knowing there'd be no cooking jobs left for her, she wanted to do something to help. They'd be getting many visitors soon, when people heard what had happened. Her mother would be dreadfully embarrassed if the house wasn't spotlessly clean. Cherish headed to the bathroom to give it a good cleaning. With both hands and all her weight behind it, she scrubbed the floor with a hard, bristled scrubbing brush soaked in vinegar and baking soda. The harder she scrubbed, the harder she pushed worrying thoughts from her mind. The main thing that concerned her was whether the will had caused the heart attack. Had Levi been so distraught about what his wife had done that his overwhelmed body could no longer take it? Why hadn't she just pushed that will back into the box where she'd found it? All of this could have been avoided. She'd heard the paramedics say a heart attack was probable. Levi would have tests to make certain. And if he died, all their lives would be disrupted once again. What would become of them with no one in charge of things? Cherish sat back on her haunches to look at what she'd done so far.
Life is so unexpected.
Yes, it is, came a loud voice from the doorway. Startled, she looked around and saw Adaa leaning against the doorframe. You're doing a good job, Adaa told her. Your mother was complaining about you girls being lazy, but so far I haven't seen that.
I guess I should have been helping with the evening meal rather than cleaning the bathroom.
Your sisters are helping. You're doing a good job right here, Cherish. Cherish smiled.
I do my best.
We have a visitor. Cherish jumped up, hoping it was Daniel, the news reporter. It would be brave of him to stop by again. He wasn't very welcome around the house after the dreadful news article that made its way into the paper by accident. Still, he had visited Levi and smoothed things over. It's Joy, Adaa finally told her. She's just pulled up. Cherish followed Adaa to the front door. Joy walked into the house at that moment and hurried toward them.
What happened?
We don't know. Adaa shook her head. You shouldn't have come. Not in your condition. And look at you with that frown.
I'm worried. They said Levi was taken away in an ambulance.
They think it was a heart attack, Cherish said. You don't need to worry about anything, Joy. I'm staying here to look after the girls.
Then I'll stay here too.
Adaa shook her head. There is no need.
Ada's right. There's no need. You stay home so you can supervise Isaac and his friends doing all that work at your house. Are you sure there's nothing I can do?
Cherish said.
Put your feet up and don't worry about us. We'll be fine. Mom would be so upset if she knew you were worried. That would be the last thing she wants. You don't want it to affect your Bopley.
Instinctively, Joy placed her hand over her tummy.
I couldn't believe it when Carter told me what happened. When I saw his car, I knew there was something dreadfully wrong. I still can't believe it.
You should get home to Isaac. Adaa put an arm around Joy's waist and moved her a few paces to the front door. Won't he be finishing work about now?
Yeah. You have 2 buggies now? Asked Cherish. Nay, most days Mark collects him and takes him to and from work. Mark and Christina don't live that far from us.
Favor and Caroline hurried out.
Stay and have dinner with us, Favor said. I can't. I've already cooked dinner at home and I'm keeping it warm. I have to get back to Isaac.
Adaa said. Someone would have called Mark's store and told him, so I'm sure Isaac knows already. Joy chewed on a fingernail.
It's so awful not being close to a phone in times like these.
Adaa pressed her lips together. You're not to worry. Someone will stop by tomorrow and let you know any news we've learned.
Tinka, that would be good.
Joy kissed them each goodbye and then headed back out to her horse and buggy. They all stood on the porch, shoulder to shoulder, and watched her leave. When she was at the bottom of the driveway, Samuel's buggy appeared.
It's Samuel,
Cherish said, giving Adaa a dig in her side with her elbow. So it is.
Ah, he misses you, Adaa, Favor teased. Can't be away from you for a moment, Cherish added, making the other girls laugh.
He's just coming to see that everything is all right. That's all.
And maybe he'll stay for dinner?
Hope grinned. Yeah, he'll stay and eat with us. He's not one to cook for himself, and we had no leftovers for him to heat.
We've made plenty, Hope told her.
I know. There's always plenty of food at the Baker household. No one seemed to notice Ada's mistake, except for Cherish. Was it the Baker household? Surely it was now the Brunner household, since her mother was married to Levi and went by the name of Brunner. It was not good timing to point out Ada's error, though, so she let it go. If Levi died, then Wilma might go back to her former name of Baker. It made sense, since she was living at the Baker apple orchard, and all her unmarried daughters and her stepsons were Bakers. Cherish shrugged, stepped back, and propped herself against the house. She didn't want to think what would happen if Levi died. Thinking positive was best, not going through all the scenarios of what might happen should God take him home. Samuel stepped down from the buggy and threw the reins over the post. He patted his horse on his shoulder before he made his way to the women who awaited him. He smiled as he looked up and saw them standing there in a row. Except, that was, for Cherish, who was standing behind everyone else. "Evening, all," he said. "Has anyone heard news of Levi?" "Nay," Adaa told him. "We'll most likely find out tomorrow. How far away is dinner, Hope?"
15 minutes. It's a very late dinner for us today.
Samuel rubbed his hands together. "I'm ready." They all went inside. Chapter 4. That night, Cherish went to bed and said a very fervent and urgent prayer that Levi would make it. Better that he die of old age for Wilma's sake. It wouldn't be fair for her mother to lose 2 husbands. Cherish guessed Levi was in his 50s somewhere. She never thought it important to know his exact age. Maybe she did know it and had forgotten. She untied her apron, took off her dress, and placed it on the hanger. Sniffing it and looking for stains, she decided she could wear it one more day without putting it in the washing basket. Then she pulled on her nightdress, and as she did so, her cap slid off her head. She stooped down and flung it on her tall chest of drawers. Then her fingers got busy undoing the tight braid that kept her hair in place through the day. One thing she knew for certain was that they'd get more than a dozen visitors tomorrow. Best she have a good sleep. Sleep? How could she? It was awful not knowing what was going on, and whether Wilma and Bliss would come home in the middle of the night, or whether they would stay at the hospital. What if Levi had died already, and her mother and Bliss were there at the hospital, clinging to each other and crying? Cherish wanted to be there to comfort them. Cherish got into bed and pulled the covers over her head. Now she was sick in the tummy, sick with guilt. Why had she gone snooping in her mother's room? And why did she find the will? Perhaps she should have left it there. But then, would she have become a part of the cover-up? A part of her mother's deception? As much as she didn't want that, it might have stopped Levi from finding out about the lies and saved him from stress. She'd heard stress could cause a heart attack. Is that what had happened? They were all paying a price for their mother's lies, and the one paying the greatest price was Levi. What happened to Levi upset Cherish, but she was also upset with Caroline. Ever since Caroline had come to stay, Favor hardly spent any time with Cherish anymore. Cherish was isolated and alone, with only her dog and Aunt Dagmar's blue budgerigar, Timmy. They were fine company, better than human sometimes, but they couldn't hold a conversation or offer an opinion. Timmy could only say a few words after many years of trying, but he was never going to replace one of her sisters. Hope was too busy with her boyfriend, and the same thing with Bliss. Bliss had been like a spare sister to her. When one of the other sisters wouldn't do anything with her, there was always Bliss, willing and cheerful and just waiting to be included. Now Bliss spent most of her time with Adam Wingard, talking about rabbits, most likely the only thing they had in common. Cherish spent the night tossing and turning. Her dog Caramel was sleeping on the end of her bed, and tonight he was her only comfort. Chapter 5. Cherish woke early, fed Bliss's rabbit, and cleaned out the cage. It was the least she could do since Bliss was still at the hospital by her father's side, as far as she knew. Each time she'd pick up the rabbit to do something with it, it snuggled into her. She could see why Bliss liked Cotton Ball so much. She was so soft, too. All the baby rabbits were gone now, thanks to Wilma's prolonged rampage that they all had to go. She didn't blame Wilma for that, not really. They had overrun the house at times when they got out of the cage. Part of Cherish had wondered whether Wilma had slipped the latch to let them out. It was something she would do. That would enable her to make more of a fuss to put pressure on Bliss to find homes. At least she'd let Bliss keep Cotton Ball. But Levi had said she could keep her, and Wilma wasn't about to go against what he'd decided. "One more cuddle before I put you back." She picked up the rabbit who was sitting on Bliss's pillow. The rabbit looked up at her, and Cherish smiled at the brown eyes studying her. Caramel sat in the doorway, observing the goings-on. He made a noise from the back of his throat. Cherish stared at him. It was a noise she hadn't heard before. "Are you jealous, Caramel?" Cherish had to laugh at him. "You are? Don't worry, I love you more." Caramel wagged his tail and walked toward her. Knowing the rabbit was nervous when dogs got too close, she put Cotton Ball back in the cage. "After breakfast, I'll bring you some food, Cotton Wool. Cotton Ball. Your mom will be home in no time, and she'll look after you real good, okay?" She then latched the cage securely. Caramel gave the rabbit a sniff. It seemed Caramel was gentle, but if the rabbit got out and ran, there was no doubt in Cherish's mind that Caramel would chase her. They still had to be kept apart as much as possible. Cherish grabbed the bag of soiled straw, walked it down to the back of the house, and put it in the trash can. Then she scrubbed her hands with a small bar of soap in the mudroom. While she did so, she heard voices in the kitchen. She wasn't the only one awake at this early hour. She dried her hands on the towel before she stepped into the kitchen. Adaa was there over a steaming fry pan, and Hope, Favor, and Caroline all sat at the kitchen table.
"Did you sleep well, Adaa?"
Cherish asked, walking over to her.
"Without Samuel?"
Favor added with a giggle. Adaa turned around and shook a fork at Favor. "You can set the table and do the washing up for that remark." Favor opened her mouth in shock, and the other girls giggled.
"I can cook the breakfast," Caroline offered. "Cooking's fun."
"Nay, I'm halfway through it. I like cooking. It's a good way to start the day. We're having bacon and fried eggs." Caroline made a face.
"Not for me, thanks. I'll just have eggs. I don't eat bacon."
"That's too bad, because that's what you're eating today."
"Mrs. Brunner doesn't make me eat it."
Adaa looked around. "Do you see Mrs. Brunner here anywhere?" Caroline's shoulders lowered. "No." Noticing everyone else had a cup of coffee, Cherish walked over and poured herself one from the carafe. "Then today you shall eat bacon. In my day, you ate what you were given. We couldn't afford to be fussy with food. We thanked God for whatever He blessed us with, for what He'd placed in front of us." Cherish sat down with the other girls and had a sip of coffee to test how hot it was. Caroline asked Adaa, "Were you poor?" "Poor in money only, rich in family togetherness and happiness. Food seems so plentiful nowadays. I don't see many going hungry."
"I see a lot of homeless people, but mainly when I go to cities," Caroline said.
"It was different in my day. After breakfast, I'll take a look at what food is needed around here, and I'm sure you have a lot of cooking you need to do for your store items. The shop will open today just like any other day. Is there a list for those food items anywhere?"
"No. At the end of the day, we tell Wilma what we need," said Caroline.
"That's not organized. How would you know what you need if you don't have a list? Everything must be recorded." Adaa groaned. "I can't believe this." Cherish frowned at Adaa making such a fuss. She was only here to help, not to restructure things and do things the way she'd do them.
"It kind of is organized because it depends on what we need to restock at the shop. We restock what's sold."
As Adaa flipped some bacon strips in the sizzling pan, she said, "But surely you have a number of items that sell regularly."
"Yeah."
"I don't like it. By the time Wilma gets back, I'll have this place running like clockwork." Favor's mouth fell open.
"How long will she be gone?"
"Nobody has that answer. Only God knows." Adaa smiled as though she was enjoying herself. Adaa then left off fussing around the fry pan to refill the carafe of coffee.
"Would you like me to pour you a cup, Adaa?" Caroline asked.
"Nay, I've had 2 already this morning." Cherish wondered why Caroline was being so nice to Adaa. Caroline must be planning to stay even longer than anyone knew. That had to be it. And to do that, she'd have to get along with Adaa, because Adaa always influenced Mom's decisions. Now with Levi out of the way, Adaa was temporarily running the place. Hope said, "We do have work to do in the orchard as well, not just the shop." "Oh, I'm well aware of that. There's work to do in the orchard and the house. That's why we're all in for a big day. When my kinder were your ages, they worked from the moment they woke until the time they went to bed. I've noticed that you girls have far too much free time. Today, that changes."
"I need to make cider today, and I need someone to help me."
Ada's eyes narrowed as she stared at Cherish. "Is that true?"
"Yeah, I wouldn't say it unless it was. I don't even like doing that job. It stinks." "That's true. She doesn't like it," Favor said. "That's why Mom gave her the job of doing it. And we don't have any left in the shop. It's a good seller."
"Since you offered, Cherish, you can choose someone to make it with you. It won't take long, will it?"
"It'll take a few hours. We have enough apples, so it's time-saving to make a bigger batch.
Okay.
There's only Favor left, since Hope's going to work, Cherish told Adaa.
This wasn't the first time Cherish noticed that the house was getting empty. Both Mercy and Honor had married and moved away. Joy was married and had just moved to another house with Isaac. And Hope was hardly ever there, because she spent most of her time either at the bed and breakfast where she worked or with Fairfax. It was only a matter of time until Hope and Fairfax were married. He was already part way through taking the instructions, and then he'd be baptized. 5 sisters, plus her half-sister Florence and her 2 half-brothers, had seemed a lot when she was younger. Now it didn't seem enough.
And me, Caroline said.
You'll both be needed at the shop, Hope told Favor and Caroline.
Your math has improved,
Adaa chortled.
You'll have to do it yourself then, Cherish. And when you've finished, you can give one of the girls a break.
Cherish's mouth fell open.
When do I get a break?
Never, if you ever speak in that tone to me again. Adaa gave a sharp nod. Cherish cleared her throat and then spoke more softly.
Sorry, Adaa, but when do I get a break? Making the cider's hard work. Can I at least have a quick bite to eat before I let one of the girls have food? I mean, it might get busy, and who knows how long I'll get stuck in the shop.
It won't get that busy. After the 2 girls in the shop each get a break, then you can stop for a sandwich. I'll have one here ready for you. I'll keep one aside.
Tinka.
You have to understand that the girls in the shop can't leave or do anything. You're not under so much pressure when you're making cider. Cherish pressed her lips together, knowing Adaa knew nothing about making cider. It wasn't easy, and she was used to doing things with someone else, having someone there to talk with. It was going to be awful being by herself. She reminded herself then that she'd be alone when she moved to the farm, and that made her feel a little better. The farm was isolated, and she might not see a living soul for days on end.
Do you have a roster for the shop anywhere so I can see who's doing what for this week?
When will Adaa let up with trying to organize everything? Cherish wondered. Now she was being annoying.
Nay, we don't have a roster. We've never needed one,
said Favor. We shall create one.
Good idea,
said Caroline. Then Timmy the budgerigar started mimicking the words, good idea, good idea. The girls laughed. Caroline stood up to take a closer look at Timmy.
I didn't know budgies could talk. They can. Dagmar spent hours trying to make him talk. She'd say things to him over and over again.
Looks like it's worked, said Adaa with half a smile.
Mom hates Timmy, Hope said.
I can see why she'd be irritated. She told me no one asked her if the bird could come into the house, and now it's living in her kitchen. Adaa glared at Cherish.
No one else could take the bird. Dagmar died. What else could I do? She would have wanted me to take him.
Did you even ask your mother? Nay, you didn't.
Dagmar lived in the middle of nowhere, and there was no way I could ask Mom. I had to bring him home with me.
Cherish thought back. Had her mother come to collect her after Dagmar died? She couldn't remember. All she could remember was stepping out of a car with the cage in her hands. Sounds like a tall story to me, Adaa said.
And he's not really in the kitchen, see?
Cherish pointed at the cage.
It's well away from where the food is prepared. The kitchen joins the dining room, and look how far away he is.
I'm just saying why Wilma gets annoyed. She didn't want the bird. I'm quite sure she's got nothing against this bird or any bird, as long as it's not living in her house. Hope said, I can't believe Mom stayed overnight at the hospital. And bless, Caroline added. Where did they sleep? Asked Hope. Cherish stared at Adaa, who'd gone quiet.
Are we going to visit him?
Nay, there is too much work to do here. We will do our bit and keep things running. Hope said, You don't really need to be here, Adaa. We're old enough to manage ourselves.
Oh, is that the time already? I've got to get to the bed and breakfast. Haven't you finished up at the bed and breakfast, Hope? Wilma told me you were quitting. I just had a few days off because they were painting rooms. I have reduced my hours. I hope you're not taking advantage of Levi being in the hospital to go against your parents' wishes. Nay, I'm not. Relax and stop worrying about everything, Adaa. She looked at Cherish. I've been put in charge, and all I'm doing is helping out. And we appreciate it. Then Cherish nodded toward Caroline. When is she going home? Caroline opened her mouth to answer when Favor spoke. She was going home, but then her house burnt down, so Levi said she could stay until it's rebuilt. Oh, that's dreadful. Your house burned down? How did that happen? Electrical fault, Caroline told her. Cherish knew that her mother had already told Adaa the story about Caroline's house burning down. She told Adaa absolutely everything. Now Adaa was acting like this was the first time she'd heard it. As Cherish ate the fried eggs and crispy bacon, she realized that even though Adaa was annoying and argumentative, there was something likable about her. She was part of their family. Then her thoughts turned to Daniel Withers, the reporter. Levi had asked him to do a positive news story, and then Daniel told him it wasn't likely the bosses would allow it. He couldn't choose his own stories. He had to do what they gave him. What she had to do was tell Daniel what had happened to Levi. We'll be getting a lot of visitors today, Adaa said. They'll all be concerned about Levi. Tell them to help me with the cider, then. Adaa smiled. I don't think so. I'll be feeding them cake and hot tea. Do we have cake? Nay, said Hope. Then I will make some as soon as I'm done with the washing up. Wait. Adaa looked around at all the girls. I said one of you girls should do the washing up. I have an important call to make. Cherish scrambled to her feet. Who to? The reporter. He should know Levi's in the hospital. That's right, Hope said. He was doing another story on Levi, wasn't he? Call him and stop it. I guess that's all right. Call him then, Cherish. I will. Cherish was delighted that Hope had helped her out. Cherish walked out of the house, pleased to leave the dirty dishes behind her. She looked back at the house. It didn't seem right that Adaa would be the person to greet the visitors today. It should have been her or one of her sisters. Although it was good of Adaa to help, it seemed she butted into everything and was trying to restructure their lives. Would Wilma be offended by Ada's actions? She was only here to look after the girls. She had heard Mom say that. Not to make new rules and lists of things for the shop. Chapter 6. Pushing the annoyance with Adaa out of her mind, Cherish headed to the barn. After checking the water trough was full for the horses, she threw out some hay for them. Favor had the job of feeding the chickens, something she always did first thing, and Hope had the job of feeding the horses. Seemed she was late today. Once Cherish was in the barn, she picked up the phone's receiver. She thumbed through the address book to find the number, and then dialed. When she heard his voice, her heart skipped. Hi, Daniel. Is this Cherish? It is. Sorry, I should have said that. You'll never guess what happened. You're hungry and ready to meet me for lunch today? No. I don't have time even if I wanted to, because Levi's in the hospital. They think he had a heart attack. Oh, I'm so sorry, Cherish. That's awful. How is he? I don't know yet. Should I go see him? Shall I collect you and take you there? No, it's okay. I don't think so. If he saw you, it would remind him of everything that happened with the news story. Do you think I caused his heart attack? No, of course not. That's a relief. There was silence for a moment before he asked, When can you come see me next? I don't know. My mother's been at the hospital since yesterday, and she's sent her friend to look after us. It's silly. We're all adults.
That's weird.
I know, and she's acting like she's in charge.
She is, isn't she?
Yes, but she's working us too hard. That's what I meant.
That's awful. She was glad he agreed.
And that's why I can't get away today. She's got me doing chores until sundown.
What about after that? Cherish nibbled on the end of her fingernail.
What do you mean?
Any chance of sneaking out of the house after dark?
I can't say for certain.
Tell you what, I'll park my car outside your place, down at the road. I'll turn my lights off so no one sees me coming or going. I'll be there at 10 on the dot. I'll wait for 15 minutes. If you can't make it, don't come out. If you do, then I'll see you tonight. Cherish smiled. He did like her and not Caroline.
Okay, sounds perfect.
I hope Levi will be okay. I'll say a prayer.
Thank you, Daniel. That's good of you.
I'll see you tonight, maybe.
Okay.
Cherish replaced the receiver. Now she'd have something to look forward to today as she made the cider. She turned around to leave the barn, and Adaa was standing there, arms folded.
What did the hospital say?
Hospital? Isn't that who you were speaking with?
No.
Who was it then?
Why was Adaa being so difficult? I said just now I was calling that reporter who did that dreadful story.
Cherish moved her weight from one foot to the other as Adaa stared at her intently.
Remember? You just said I could call him.
Adaa frowned. Cherish continued.
You see, Levi was in contact with him recently about doing another story. A good one. And
you wanted to see if he could do a story about Levi having a heart attack? Cherish shook her head and looked down. Adaa was being ridiculous.
Not at all.
Adaa scratched her nose. I just thought the reporter would be your second call. Your first call should have been to the hospital to ask how Levi is. Do it now. We're all waiting and anxious to hear.
Yeah, Adaa.
And hurry. That cider isn't going to make itself. After I make cake for the visitors, I'm making apple pies for the shop. We don't have enough today, thanks to you girls not making any last night.
Danke, Adaa.
Adaa turned around and walked out. Cherish made a face at her and mimicked the way she walked, rocking slightly from side to side. It was mean, but she couldn't help it. Adaa was so annoying, acting like a big boss lady. Who would have felt like baking pies right after Levi was taken away in an ambulance? After poking her tongue out at Adaa, just as Adaa walked out of the barn, Cherish turned around and grabbed the phone book. She leafed through it until she found the number of the hospital. She called and was told that Levi had gotten a good sleep and was feeling a bit better. They couldn't tell her when he was coming home or any other details. Cherish hurried out to tell Adaa the news. She burst through the front door and ran into the kitchen.
He's alive. He's in some kind of special care unit.
That is good news. Now, the cider. Adaa stared at her.
I'm going. I just thought I should tell you as soon as possible so you stop worrying. I'll just tell the girls and then I'll—
Nay, I'll tell them. You get started with what you are supposed to be doing.
Sure.
Cherish walked out of the house, dragging her feet. It was no fun doing jobs by herself. When she was nearly back at the barn, she heard a buggy and looked up. It was Samuel. Adaa stepped out of the house to meet him. From a distance, Cherish watched. Adaa talked to him for a few moments before she continued walking to the shop at the bottom of the driveway. There was no kiss, Cherish noticed. She'd never seen older married couples kiss, only the younger couples, and only when they thought they weren't being watched. She decided then and there that when she was older, she wanted her husband to greet her with a kiss. He'd find her so irresistible that he'd want to kiss her when they'd been apart, even when she was old and had lost her youthful looks. Samuel was standing in the middle of the driveway with his hands on his hips, like he didn't know what to do with himself. Cherish walked over.
Samuel, just the person I was hoping would stop by.
He looked at her and grinned. Cherish?
How would you like to help me make cider?
He chuckled. That's just what Adaa suggested I do, but she didn't tell me where you were.
I was just about to go to the shed.
I'll turn the horse out in the paddock. Looks like I might be here a while. Knowing him, he'd stay for the evening meal. It was a wonder Samuel and Adaa hadn't moved in. After Samuel tended to the horse, Cherish collected the wheelbarrow from the barn.
We'll need to get the apples first.
I know that much, he said.
I'm pleased to have some company today. I'm not used to being by myself or doing chores by myself. It's nice to do things with someone else. It makes the day go faster.
If you say so. They walked to one of the storage containers of apples.
Have you done this before?
Asked Cherish. Many a time. I used to help your father.
I guess I would have been young back then.
Cherish opened the door, and they proceeded to fill the barrow with apples. I'm talking about before you were even born.
Wow, that was a long time ago. So when he was married to Florence's mother? Make sure you toss aside any apples that have rotten sections. Just toss them out the door, and I'll collect them later.
Okay. That's right, when he was married to Eleanor. Although Adaa and Eleanor didn't get along that well. Cherish placed some apples in the barrow and stood up, hoping for some gossip.
Really?
He chuckled. I didn't mean it like that. They weren't best friends like Adaa and Wilma.
I see. Yes, Adaa and Mom are very close. It's nice. It's nice to have a close friend. I had a close friend once. It was Favor. Only now she has a new friend.
You mean Caroline? They continued to fill the wheelbarrow.
That's the one.
That won't last long.
Won't it? What do you know that I don't know?
Nothing. She'll go home sooner or later. She watched Samuel put too many apples in the barrow.
That'll be enough, or they'll fall out when we're moving it.
She put some back.
There, now you can push it.
Okay. They walked toward the cider-making shed.
Well, I don't need all of Favor's attention. It's just that I didn't realize how much I enjoyed her company until Caroline came along.
Things are always changing. Nothing stays the same.
You're not the first person to mention that to me in the last little while.
I'm not? Who else said that?
I can't remember, but when I do, I'll tell you.
He smiled, moving his beard upward. Fair enough.
You seem in a good mood. Is everything okay?
What does that mean? Am I normally grumpy?
Not really, just stern.
He shrugged his shoulders. Now let's get started. Are your sisters coming home? Mercy or Honor?
I don't think so, not that I've heard.
Cherish hadn't given her older sisters much thought. They'd got married and moved away, and they had one child each. I just thought they might come because of the emergency.
It would be hard for them with the kinner. It's a long way to travel.
It is, but they could both get a car. Hire a car. Cherish shrugged her shoulders.
I don't know if they've got the money for that.
They came back for Wilma's wedding. I do enjoy Stephen's company. He's always got a joke or two to tell.
A joke or two? More like 10 jokes, one after the other.
He chuckled again. Can you remember any of them?
Nay, I can never remember jokes. I wish I could. I just forget them as soon as I hear them. Do you have a good one?
I'm the same, Cherish. They go right out of my head as soon as I hear them. If I hear a good one, I'll have to write it down.
I might have to as well.
They reached the shed and proceeded to wash the apples. After that, they fed the apples into the hopper, and Cherish let Samuel turn the wheel to grind them. Adaa approached them, and Samuel looked up and stopped when he realized it was his wife. You two are doing a lot of talking, Adaa said. Try less talking and more working. Samuel smiled at his wife's remark. We are doing a good job, aren't we, Cherish?
We are. We're hurrying through it, so we'll be finished quicker.
Adaa moved closer and had a better look. Don't hurry too much. We want a good job done of it.
Sure, it'll taste good. Don't worry about that,
Cherish told her. Get on with it. Ada turned around and walked away. In the next half hour, while the juice was flowing into containers, Samuel and Cherish heard the arrival of 3 buggies. Ada and the girls had expected a lot of visitors, and they weren't wrong. Before they were fully finished, Samuel had to leave. Then Cherish took her time over the last bottles. The last thing she wanted was to give one of the girls at the shop a break before she had one. Ada was so unreasonable. Chapter 7. With Iris in her arms, Florence looked out her kitchen window at her rows of small apple trees. Her orchard had finally taken shape, and now it looked like it was an orchard, a young one. They'd been through a lot to get it to that point. Months of extensive drainage systems, and many more months preparing the soil. I wonder how Levi is today. No one's come to tell us any bad news. That seems promising. I'll call the hospital and find out. She swung around to Carter, who was doing something on his laptop computer. Oh, will they tell us? I don't see why not. They'd have asked Wilma for the names of family who might call. Okay. He lifted up some books and folders, looking for his phone. It's on the couch, Florence told him. Ah, thanks. He headed out of the room. I can't wait for the day when I can have a proper office with all my things in place, he called out over his shoulder. Carter was looking forward to getting their new house built more so than she was. She was content where they were, even though they were nearly busting out of the seams in this house. She'd been tempted to tell him that if he didn't stop making changes to the plans, it never would be started. Florence loved their cottage. It was homey and comfortable, and she hoped she'd feel the same when they'd settled into the new house. The home she'd grown up in had been huge, but with her 2 older brothers and her 6 half-sisters, it hadn't seemed so big at the time. As much as Florence wanted her father's orchard back, she didn't want it to come to her like this. She didn't want it back because a tragedy had befallen Levi. It was sad to see her old orchard so neglected. The soil wasn't right. Compost was badly needed, too, to stop the weeds. She only saw their vegetable garden from a distance, but she could already see that it was badly neglected, too. The girls weren't doing enough work, and the place needed them all to work, all the day long. When she was living with Wilma and the girls, she'd had to force the girls to work as well as check their tasks had been done, and done properly. Now it was as though no one cared. Carter walked back into the room, having made the call. They didn't say much, just that he had a good night and was seeing a different cardiologist today. A different one? Yes, that's all they told me. The nurse, or whomever I spoke with, seemed in a hurry to get off the phone. Do you think we should visit? No, not under the circumstances. He might be worried about the ownership of the orchard, and we don't want to put any added stress on him. Maybe you're right. She looked out the window again. Thanks for doing that. Where do we go from here? She looked over at him. What do you mean? You've got something on your mind. I can see it. I'm just worried about the orchard. It's so run down. There are so many jobs to do there. I don't know what they've been doing, but they haven't been doing what they're supposed to be doing. You can't worry about that. We have 2 orchards to think about. Ours and the Jenkins. Ours and ours, you mean? It's not the Jenkins any longer. I know, but you still have to oversee the workers. My point is that you're too worried about what's happening at their orchard when we have so much going on with our own. I know what you're saying, but I can't help it. Carter shook his head and sat down at the kitchen counter, which doubled as a desk since they'd had to make room in his office upstairs for the nursery. Maybe when Iris is sleeping, I should go over there and ask what I can do to help. Sure, if that's what you want. He hadn't looked up from his work. She knew the way he clenched his jaw that he was annoyed. I know Ada's there and everything, but she'd be looking after the house, and I can see what urgent things need doing with the orchard. I don't know if anyone over there even knows how bad things are. They should. He stood and held out his hands. Go now. I'll put Iris down for a nap when she's ready. Seriously? You don't mind? Go do what you have to do. I know it's important, and you won't stop thinking or talking about it until you do something. She passed Iris over and then kissed him. Thanks. I'll try not to be long. I've got workers coming here today to put more compost down, but they know what they need to do. We'll be fine here. Thanks. She grabbed her light mauve cardigan from the couch and pulled it around her shoulders before she headed out the door. As Florence walked to the fence line, she hoped Wilma would be okay with her helping out. It wasn't as though she was trying to take over, although someone should take over, given the state of the trees. 3 starlings swooped at her just before she slipped through the wires that made up the fence. Starlings were a major threat to the apples. When she was about 12, they had a huge problem with the starlings contaminating the orchard with their roosting. Her father got in contact with people who had falcons. That had solved the problem, and it had never been that bad again. Florence looked up at the birds, now circling above her baby trees. Over the years, her father had tried many different things other than the falcons to keep those pesky birds away, including sprays and nets. Everything had worked to a degree. If the Baker apple orchard wasn't under control, it would contaminate her orchard. She'd known that before, when Levi had thoughts about changing it from an organic orchard. Then he'd changed his mind back. But if they were going to stay away from the poisonous sprays, it was much more work to get things under control. Besides that, prevention was their best defense. From a distance, Florence saw someone coming out of the back door of her old house. It was Adaa. Just a glimpse of her was all it took for Florence to lose confidence. She hid behind a tree and peeped around. The last person she wanted to talk to was Adaa. She watched as Adaa watered 2 small trees that were to one side of the vegetable garden. Adaa then looked up and all around, as though she knew someone was watching her. Florence moved further behind the tree so she wouldn't be spotted. By the time she peeped around again, Adaa was back in the house. It was no use. Florence knew that now. Whatever she had to say to Wilma or the girls was something she didn't want to discuss in front of Adaa. She'd refuse any help she offered. Florence was more than sure about it. All she could do now was go back home and wait for someone to contact them with news of Levi. Chapter 8. Bliss and Wilma slept in chairs in the coronary care unit. The tests Levi had undergone had confirmed a heart attack. The cardiologist was consulting with another one who'd be there in a few hours. There was talk of Levi needing a stent, but Wilma knew he'd refuse. Bliss was just waiting until he woke up so she could talk him into it. She looked over at Wilma.
I'll stay. You should go and get some sleep.
At that moment, Levi's eyes flickered open. He looked over at Bliss and then turned his head to look at Wilma. Fix things. Wilma got off her chair, moved closer, and took hold of his hand. What things do you want me to fix? Fix things, Wilma. And then his eyes closed.
What things does he want you to fix, Mom?
Bliss stared at her stepmother. It's just something to do with the orchard.
What exactly? He seemed very upset by it.
It's nothing much.
Are you sure?
Asked Bliss. Wilma nodded.
Can you tell me what it is?
Wilma shook her head and looked away. Bliss knew something wasn't right. Wilma was hiding something.
Do you think whatever it was caused his heart attack?
Wilma let go of Levi's hand, placing it gently by his side. I don't think so.
You better go home and fix it. Get some sleep, too.
You go, Bliss. You could use some sleep.
I'll be fine. One of us should go home. I'll stay while you go.
Wilma shook her head. Nay, you go.
I can't. I can't leave his side. For so long it was only the 2 of us. He'd want me here.
The orchard, Levi mumbled without opening his eyes.
See, Mom? Whatever it is he wants you to do, you should do it.
Maybe.
Call Carter. He'll come and fetch you. I'm sure he will. Yeah, but I don't have his phone number. I'm sure they have a phone book here. Just look it up. I'll get one of the nurses to look it up for us.
Dinka, Bliss. That would be good. Bliss walked out of the room and then couldn't remember Carter's last name. She was just about to walk back in and ask Wilma when she heard her father speak. It was so unexpected that she stopped and listened. Come closer, Wilma. I can't talk in front of Bliss. Bliss couldn't believe her ears. What couldn't he talk about in front of her? Did he think he was dying and wanted to make funeral arrangements? You made this mess with the orchard. You fix it. His voice was stronger now, not like before. What will I do? How can it be fixed? You've made the future uncertain for all of us. Bliss put her hand over her mouth. What mess with the orchard? Uncertain future?
I did what I thought was best,
Wilma whined. Nay, you did what was best for you. No regard to Florence, and no regard for what your first husband wanted. Bliss listened harder. She knew it was wrong to do so, but she had to hear more. Florence was in the community when he made that will. Do you think he would have wanted her to have the orchard if he knew she would leave? Slowly, Bliss put the pieces together. There was a will, and it sounded like Wilma's first husband left the orchard to Florence. Were they only finding out about this now? Why was her father blaming Wilma? Don't argue, Wilma. She might have stayed if she'd known. Levi stopped, and Bliss heard him gasp for air. She wanted to run in, but then they'd know she'd been listening. Don't upset yourself, Wilma told him. He continued. No one knows how that would have changed everybody's future. Including mine, and now you miss out, Wilma snapped. Did you marry me or the orchard? Bliss was shocked to hear her stepmother talk like that to her ill father. It was selfish of her to speak so meanly. I thought you were a virtuous woman. I am, Wilma said. You have to work this out with Florence. That's exactly what I was doing before you had this heart attack. I was trying to talk with her. Sorry I interrupted you. Now Bliss knew what had happened and exactly what Wilma had done. She didn't want to face her right now. What is Carter's last name? Think. Bliss closed her eyes tightly. Carter Braithwaite. That's right. She walked to the nurse's station, still trying to fathom what Wilma had done. One of the nurses looked up Carter's phone number and wrote it down for her. When Bliss got back to the room, her father had his eyes closed again, and Wilma was still seated, looking worried. She handed the slip of paper to Wilma. Here it is. Do you want me to call for you? I didn't know if you wanted me to or not. Nay, I can do it. You sit with your father. Bliss pointed to the phone in the room, on the corner of the bedside table. You can make the call from here. Ah, I didn't know they had one in the rooms. They told me there's one in every room. While Wilma made the call, Bliss moved closer to her father and stood by his side. He opened his eyes and lifted up his hand. She held it. It had been a long time since they'd held hands, not since she was a child. She hoped he didn't think he was dying. You'll be okay, Dot. They said the longer you're here, the better you'll be. What happened to you might never happen again. I'm not worried. I'm in God's hands. You continue being the girl you've always been. Never change. She couldn't speak. If she did, she'd cry. All she could do was nod. "And look after Wilma," he added. "I will." When she heard Wilma hang up the phone's receiver, she turned around. "Is he coming to get you?" "He said he'll be here in 20 minutes, and I'm to wait outside." "Make sure you have a good rest. We don't need you getting sick, too." "Go home too, Bliss," Levi said. "Nay, I'm fine here. Besides, I'm getting out of chores." He closed his eyes, and the corners of his lips turned upward. When Wilma left the room, Bliss leaned down and kissed her father lightly on his forehead. She'd lost her mother, and had never stopped to consider her father might not live to see her children. How could she marry if he wasn't at the wedding? It wouldn't be the same. Nothing in her life would ever be the same if she didn't have her father. Chapter 9. Cherish had finished the cider making and wanted to keep clear of well-wishers in the form of visitors. She'd counted 5 lots today. She also wanted to stay away from Adaa, and hopefully, Adaa would still think she was making the cider. Earlier, she'd noticed many of the apples had gone off, and she knew how it was important to get rid of them before they contaminated the rest. "One bad apple ruins the rest," her father used to say, as she and her sisters had helped find the rotten ones. As young children, the orchard had been such a fun place. In the midst of her sorting through the apples, she heard a car. Who would that be? Carter? She stepped out from behind the shed to see their beekeeper neighbors, Howard Evans and his son, Eddie. They lived about a mile away and made the most delicious honey. In days gone by, they used to visit and give them jars of honey. That had stopped. Cherish hadn't remembered about it until she saw them just now. Their bees were valuable to all the nearby orchards, and if it weren't for the Evans family, they'd have to keep their own bees for the sake of the orchard. That was something that didn't appeal to Cherish at all. Adaa shouldn't greet them. What would she say to them? They were Englishers, and Adaa probably didn't even know them. Cherish looked back at the apples. She hated leaving in the middle of a job, but she had to talk to Howard and Eddie. She quickly headed over, just as Adaa was greeting them at the front door. "Hello, Mr. Evans and Eddie." They both turned around to look at her and smiled. Mr. Evans was a tall man with glasses, and he was balding on top. He'd developed quite a belly since Cherish had seen him last. Then her attention turned to Eddie. He had to be in his mid-20s. He was okay-looking, just as tall as his father, with jet-black hair. As she walked closer, she saw he had adorable dimples. She hadn't remembered those. He looked away as she got closer. He seemed almost shy. It was cute. "Who do we have here?" Mr. Evans asked her. "I'm Cherish, the youngest. My mother's still at the hospital." Cherish stepped up on the porch, not even looking at Adaa. But even so, she sensed her disapproval at her butting in on the visitors. "We don't know when Levi will be back. Is that why you're here? Because you heard about Levi?" "That's right. And we saw the ambulance with the flashing light. We were concerned and came to ask how he is." "We don't know," Adaa and Cherish said at the same time. Adaa scowled at Cherish. "You have work to do." "I do, it's true." Cherish stayed, not taking Ada's hint. "If you've finished the cider, relieve one of the girls for her lunch break." Cherish smiled sweetly at Adaa. "I'm still working." "We brought you some honey," Eddie said, smiling at the two women. "Oh, wonderful." "Adaa, Mr. Evans and Eddie are beekeepers and make the most delicious honey." Ada's eyebrows rose. "You're from just over the way?" Mr. Evans nodded. "That's right." "The Be Right Honey Company," Eddie added. Immediately, Adaa turned on the charm as her face lit up. "I buy your honey all the time, from your stall with the honesty box out in front of your house. Do come in for hot tea and cake, won't you?" "We'd be delighted." Mr. Evans turned to his son. "Grab a box of honey out of the car, would you, son?" "Sure." "And Cherish, go back to work." Adaa glared at her.
I will.
Cherish didn't care about the way Adaa spoke to her. She was glad she'd talked to their neighbors. You're grown up now, Cherish, Eddie said after his father and Adaa went inside the house. Cherish looked down at herself and held her arms out to the side.
I guess I have. So have you.
It had to happen. He headed to the car and she walked with him.
I remember you used to come here often.
Yeah, when Mr. Baker, your pa, was alive.
Oh, you didn't come here after that?
Not so much. That's how I remember it. Your pa always used to give us so much. Apples, cider, apple pies, so much stuff.
I didn't know that. And we didn't after he died. Is that why you stopped visiting? Oh, I didn't mean that to sound so rude. Sometimes I don't think before I speak.
He chuckled. It's okay.
I'm just trying to work out when you stopped visiting. We buy your honey at the markets. There's a jar on the table at nearly every meal, every breakfast anyway.
Between you and me, we were still bringing you honey after your pa died. But then we found out from someone you were selling it. Cherish gasped.
Not me.
He smiled as he reached the car and opened the door. Not you, but someone was. Most likely your mother. Someone told us you were selling it at your roadside stall.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Someone must have told him. A customer, maybe.
I didn't know.
Florence wouldn't have been involved in that. Perhaps Florence didn't know about it. Well, it happened, and my pa said he wasn't going to give your family honey anymore if you were only selling it.
That's only reasonable.
He pulled out a box of honey that must have contained about 20 small jars.
Is that all for us? Cherish asked.
Sure is.
I promise we won't sell it.
When he chuckled, she looked into his handsome face, and then she found herself asking,
Are you married?
He burst out laughing, and she noticed the dimples in his cheeks. They were cute. No, I'm not. You asking for yourself? Cherish couldn't help smiling. He was so easy to talk with.
I'm not. I'm just curious. Besides, I'm too young.
He leaned against the car. Never found the right girl. That's why I'm single. Then he balanced the box of honey in one hand, pulled out a packet of cigarettes, and put it up to his mouth, and with his lips pulled one out. Want one? He managed to ask with the cigarette between his lips.
I don't smoke. I might when I'm older, but not now.
He pulled the lighter out of his pocket and lit it. Then Cherish had to wonder if he'd be good for Caroline. That would stop Caroline from liking the Amish men who were courting her sisters, and it would also divert Caroline's attention from Daniel.
What kind of a woman are you looking for? She asked. I know a lot of young women.
It's hard to say. He tilted his head upward and blew the smoke out.
So you have no particular type?
That's right. It's hard to meet women around here. I don't like any I went to school with, and I really don't go out much.
Do you have a cell phone?
Yeah, of course.
Let's see it.
He grinned at her as he pulled it out of his pocket and handed it to her. Cherish didn't know much, but she had learned a thing or two about cell phones from Caroline. She pulled up their visitor's YouTube channel and showed Eddie Caroline's profile picture.
Do you like the look of this person?
His face lit up. I've seen her before. I saw a thing she did about your Amish community.
Yes, that's her. So, what do you think?
She's very pretty. But girls like that never go for a guy like me. She'd want someone rich and handsome.
No, she's not like that. I think you'd be perfect for her, and she's staying right here at the house. She's in that shop right now.
He gulped. She's here?
Yes. Why don't I take this honey inside, and I'll tell your father you're in the shop saying hello to my sisters. It's not a lie. One of my sisters is there.
He took a long puff on his cigarette. I don't know. I know if I had a girl like that, I'd never need anything again.
Come and meet her. What have you got to lose?
Everything. She could think I'm a real no-hoper. Cherish bit her lip. He was right. She probably would.
Tell me some things about yourself that a girl might like.
I can't think of anything. His mouth pulled to one side. You see the problem?
Try harder. Did you go to college?
Yeah, of course.
That's a start, I guess. She's in college right now. You have that in common. She's enrolled, at least, on a break right now.
Cherish glanced at the house and saw Adaa standing in the doorway, hands on hips.
I'll tell you what. Think about it, and I'll be working in town on Friday afternoon.
She rattled off the name of the cafe where she worked along with the address.
Come and see me, and we'll work on a plan to get you two together.
He lifted his chin as he stared at her. Why are you helping me?
Cherish,
Adaa called out.
I'm going,
she yelled back. Then she turned back to Eddie.
Meet me, okay?
I can be there at 3.
Perfect. That's when my shift finishes. See you then.
Even better than that, she'd get him to drive her home from work on Friday. But she wouldn't mention that now. Okay, he said, as she hurried back to her apples. Before Cherish stepped behind the shed, she looked back to see Eddie dropping his cigarette butt on the ground. He squished it with the toe of his boot, and then he made his way to the house. If Eddie didn't know what would attract a woman to him, she had to come up with a plan. To do that, she'd have to know exactly what kind of a man Caroline wanted. Not just what she told people she wanted because she thought it sounded good, but what she really wanted. What was important to Caroline? To do that, she'd have to get to know her better. Cherish stuck out her tongue and shook her head. It was the last thing she wanted to do, but for the sake of her sisters and herself, she'd have to. Besides that, it was a welcome change rather than worrying about Levi all the day long. Levi had told every one of the girls to stop working outside of the orchard, but he still hadn't directly ordered Bliss and Cherish to stop working at the cafe. They'd cut down to doing 1 shift each a week, hoping Levi would change his mind. Cherish couldn't wait until Friday. She'd be getting away from Ada's nagging and her disapproving looks. Chapter 10. Florence was upstairs changing Iris's diaper when she heard the downstairs phone ringing. A good majority of the calls they got on their home phone were telemarketing calls. Everybody else called their cell phones. Carter answered it, and she heard him talking. She walked down the stairs with Iris in her arms, just as he ended the call. Who was that? It was Wilma. She stayed in the hospital all night and wants me to pick her up and take her home. And how's Levi? Did she say? He's fine. Well, he's not fine. He had a heart attack, but he's still alive. They wanted to do a procedure, but at this point he's refusing. Wilma said she'd heard the words, a sudden cardiac event. His heart lost the ability to pump blood to his brain. I thought that was a stroke. No idea. I think that's something different. He leaned forward and grabbed his keys from the coffee table. I'll be back as soon as I can. Don't rush. Do you want to come for the drive? No. I don't think Wilma will want to see me. Probably a good idea. Don't mention anything about the will. He chuckled. Of course not. That's the last thing anyone wants to think about right now. He headed to the door. Tell Wilma about me wanting to help at the orchard. I was going to say something to the girls, then I saw Adaa, and I couldn't talk to her. He shook his head. I know you said that when you came back, but why? She makes me nervous. She's always so opinionated, and she influences Wilma. Get her on side, then. She only wants what's best for the family. Florence bit her lip. I guess so. Get over your nerves. Florence blew out a deep breath. I don't like confrontation. Don't expect it. It's simple. They need help, and you're offering it. And what better person could they get than you? I know, it's true. Florence smiled. I can start tomorrow. Can you tell her that? I will say that you've offered, but while I'm gone, why don't you go there and talk to Adaa?
Do you think so?
Yes.
Okay. I hope she's all right about it. I don't want anyone to think I'm taking over. I just want to help out, no matter the outcome.
I'll let Wilma know. If she has a problem with it, I'm sure she'll say so.
Good.
Bye, Spot, Carter yelled out to their dog. I'd take you with me, but I don't think it'd be a good idea. Spot stayed lying on the couch and lifted one ear. When Iris started crying, Florence jiggled her up and down. Why don't I take her with me? It'll settle her, and I'm sure she'll sleep in the car.
Good idea. I'll get her diaper bag.
I'll get it.
Carter raced up the stairs and grabbed the diaper bag that they always took when they were heading out. He slung it over his shoulder, headed back down the stairs, and took Iris from Florence. As soon as Carter held her, she stopped crying. Ah, she just wanted her daddy. Carter laughed.
Maybe. I'll see you later.
Florence kissed Iris on the top of her head. Then she and Carter kissed before he headed out the door. Florence stood at the kitchen window and watched Carter put Iris in her seat, and stayed there until he drove away. It was strange that she and Wilma had been so close. Now they had never been so far apart. Wilma had put her own needs and the needs of her girls in front of what Florence's father had wanted for all of them. How could she ever feel the same about her? Their relationship had become strained even before she found out about this. Now it was time to offer help at the orchard. That meant talking to Adaa before Wilma got there. If Adaa agreed, she'd be the one to talk Wilma into it. She inhaled deeply and mentally gathered her strength. When she had her hand on the door handle, Spot jumped off the couch. Later, Spot. Not now. Back on the couch. Spot looked up at her. Then he turned around and jumped onto the couch. Good boy. Florence stepped out onto the porch and closed the door behind her. She walked down to the fence line where she would cut across the orchard to the house where she grew up. As soon as 2 feet were on her family orchard, she was very much aware that all of it was meant to be hers. Her head spun with several thoughts competing for her attention. Was it God's will that she didn't have it? Perhaps it was God's will that she would have it, and that was why Cherish found the will. Why had her father done things that way? Maybe he thought he'd be a very old man when he died. Wilma was always so sickly, so maybe her father thought Wilma might go first. When Florence saw her old family home, her heart pounded. It was awful to be a stranger there, and having to speak to Adaa was even worse. She was a forthright woman and very opinionated. Placing one foot after another, she made her way closer, while chasing away negative thoughts. She put one foot on the front porch and wanted to run, but kept going. Just as she was about to knock, the door opened. It was Adaa. Adaa stared at her, her lips tightly formed into a straight line. At first, Florence wanted to thank Adaa for coming there to help out, but it wasn't her place to do so, since having been disowned by Wilma and never liked by Levi. You heard what happened, then? Adaa folded her arms. Oh, yes. I was here when the paramedics came. That's right. Carter said you were both here. We saw him taken away. Wilma has just called Carter, and he's getting her now and bringing her home. Who? Carter. Oh, he is? Yes. That information seemed to make Adaa relax. She opened the door wider. Come in. Florence walked into the house. Looking around, she saw not much had changed. What is it you want, Florence? She turned around to look at Adaa. Were they going to stand in the hallway and talk? I want to offer my help. I see the orchard has got a bit run down, and there are many jobs that need doing. Do you want to help in the orchard? I do. Adaa looked confused. Florence knew she'd have to explain, since Adaa knew nothing about orchards. You see, there are going to be major problems if things aren't seen to. She rattled off all the issues she saw,
and told her how they would affect the surrounding orchards if they weren't taken care of. "So what you're really doing is you're helping us so you can help yourself." "I guess so, but that's something I would rather not do if I didn't have to. But since Levi is in the hospital and—" "I see what you mean. I was only being silly, trying to be funny. It's a very generous offer, and I don't think anyone will have a problem with you helping out. Wilma has let the girls get away with far too much. They wouldn't have been so lazy if you were still here. I'll give you that. It's hard for Wilma to be strict sometimes." Adaa narrowed her eyes as she looked Florence up and down. "We're a lot alike, you and I, aren't we?" Florence was relieved, but didn't agree with her statement. "A lot like Adaa? No thanks. We both don't like seeing things half done." "That's true. I do like things done properly. So, how do we approach this?" "I think it's best if I can start doing a few things tomorrow. I will need the girls to help. Is that possible? I see they've got the shop open now. Is it open every day?" "Yeah, except on Sundays. You can have 2 girls to help. I'll organize it." "Thank you."
"And you said Carter has gone to collect Wilma?"
"That's right."
"Where is the little one?"
"Oh, she's been having trouble sleeping, so Carter took her with him. She'll fall asleep in the car."
"Very good. I'll keep an eye out for him when he comes so I can see baby Iris."
"If everything is okay with Wilma and she doesn't object, I'll be back here at 8 in the morning. Will you have the girls ready?"
"I will."
Florence felt a weight lift off her shoulders. "Thanks, Adaa." Adaa turned around and opened the door for Florence to walk through it. "I'll see you tomorrow then, Adaa."
"Yeah, see you tomorrow."
Florence gave her a smile and then walked away. Chapter 11. Cherish couldn't string things out any longer. She'd finished the cider making, and she'd sorted through an entire shed full of apples. Now she had to wheel the bottles of cider to the shop. At some stage during the morning, Cherish had been sure she'd caught a glimpse of Florence disappearing into the orchard. She'd make a detour to find out why Florence had been here. Had she talked to Adaa? Was there news of Levi? Cherish left the wheelbarrow loaded with bottles of cider outside the back door of the house, and then burst into the kitchen. Adaa looked up from pouring herself a cup of tea as she sat at the kitchen table.
"Was Florence here this morning?"
"She was."
"What did she want?"
Adaa carefully set the large china teapot back down on the table. "She offered to help us out at the orchard."
"Help us?"
Cherish asked.
"That's right. According to her, the place is going to rack and ruin. I wouldn't know. It still looks the same to me, but with Levi in the hospital and your mother spending all the time away, I had to make a decision. I said that she could do some work on the place. I'm sure that's the right thing. She doesn't want payment or anything. She didn't mention it."
Adaa tapped her chin.
"I wonder if she meant she wanted to get paid for it."
"Nay, of course not. She doesn't want money. Carter's rich."
"That's right. Your mother told me that. Florence said that anything wrong with the orchard here would affect neighboring orchards, and we're here in between her 2 orchards like the filling in a sandwich."
Cherish laughed.
"That's true. We're the filling in a Florence sandwich. I never thought of it like that."
Now Adaa was scowling again.
"Why are you out of the shop?"
"I'm just going there now."
"You haven't been yet? Samuel said you were finishing up, and that was hours ago. I said to go there directly after your cider making. Then I see you talking with Eddie."
Cherish looked down at the cup of tea. When was Adaa going to do any work? Apart from the cooking and entertaining visitors, all she did was drink tea. Cherish made up a fib.
"I just came to get some more supplies. We're nearly out of taffy apples, and Mom keeps them here in the supply room."
"Help yourself if there are any there. I wouldn't know what's here. We need a list. Do we have one?"
"Nay, we don't."
Adaa shook her head.
"Things aren't very organized around here." "I guess they aren't. Are you going to start making lists?"
I've got enough work to do with you girls. I'm the only one to do the chores around here.
By yourself?
Yeah.
Please don't do our rooms. It wouldn't be fair for you to do that. We can do our rooms ourselves.
Bliss had told her how one of the baby rabbits had chewed the window frame to pieces. She was going to help Bliss fix it somehow, but they hadn't gotten around to it yet. Wilma would be extremely upset if she found out about that. The last thing Cherish wanted was another bunny drama. What have you got in your rooms that you don't want me to see? Cherish laughed to cover up the truth.
It's nothing like that. I'm just worried about you doing too much, that's all.
Okay. It's very nice of you to be concerned about me, Cherish.
That's how I am, a nice kind of a person.
If that's right, then you must have changed. And I think you have. You are a whole lot less trouble than you used to be.
Dinka, I think.
Well, you can't stand around here thinking all day. Get those taffy apples and be off with you.
Okay.
Cherish went into the supply room and filled up a bag with taffy apples. Then the sound of a car reached their ears. That'll be Wilma. Adaa charged out of the kitchen, nearly knocking Cherish off her feet. Cherish followed her out of the house to Carter's car. "Oh, you look dreadful," was the first thing Adaa said to Wilma. "I've come home for a rest before I go back again."
How is he?
Cherish asked. "He's okay." Adaa said hello to Carter and then turned her attention to the sleeping baby Iris. "Ah, she looks just like Florence did when she was a Bopley. And she looks like Mercy. That's what I think," Wilma said. "Nay, she looks like Florence and not Mercy at all." "Wilma, let me know when you're ready to go back. I'll drive you," Carter said. "Thank you, Carter." Cherish smiled and waved to Carter as he drove away. Adaa grabbed Wilma by the arm and led her inside. With Adaa around, Cherish couldn't even get 2 words in. "You go straight up to your bedroom. I'll fix you something to eat and a good strong cup of coffee. Make that hot tea, would you? Weak and black. Kaffa will only keep me awake, and I need to sleep." "Of course."
"I'll make it,"
Cherish said, heading back to the kitchen. "Cherish, have you called Mercy and Honor?" Wilma asked.
"Nay, I didn't think of it."
"Well, you should have thought of it," Adaa snapped at her. "You're old enough to take the burden of these things off your mudder." Cherish bit her tongue. She was tempted to point out that Adaa hadn't thought of it either. If she had, she'd kept quiet about it.
"I'll call them right now."
"Yeah, please." Just as Cherish hurried to the barn to make that call, she saw an angry Caroline stomping up the driveway toward her. She stopped.
"What's wrong?" "We're all hungry and need bathroom breaks. You were supposed to come there." "I know, but you're unbelievable. You'd have to be the most selfish, unlikable person I've ever met. And I've met a lot of people."
Cherish was upset.
"Mom's back, and she wants me to make urgent phone calls. I'll be there after that."
"Oh."
"Well, why didn't you say so?" "I just did."
Cherish walked away from her, annoyed that Caroline had spoken to her like she was a naughty child. Once she was in the barn, she flipped through the address book and found Mercy's number. She called Mercy first, and Mercy assured her she'd tell Honor. That just saved her a call. Mercy wanted to come for a visit, and Cherish told her no, that everything was fine, and that Adaa had moved in to look after the girls. When Cherish hung up the phone's receiver, she headed back into the house. Mom was sitting down with Adaa in the living room, and Cherish joined them. If Caroline was so rude, she could wait a bit longer. "Do they think he'll die?" asked Cherish. "I don't know, but he's not going to have a very good chance if he refuses the operation."
"And he said he doesn't want it?"
asked Cherish. "He is refusing to have the operation?" Adaa said.
"That's his choice."
"Your mudder wants to hear words of encouragement from you, Cherish. Of course she knows it's his choice." Still seething over her talk with Caroline just now, Cherish asked,
"Mom, do you think it's a good time to send our visitor home?"
"Cherish!" Adaa glared at her.
Oh, Ada, I don't mean you. I'm talking about Caroline.
Ada chortled. That's good.
What do you say, Mom?
I can't think about anything like that now, Cherish. I've got too much on my mind. Ada said, I think we need all the help we can get around here with all the things that need doing. Wilma nodded. An extra pair of hands is surely coming in handy, isn't it?
I guess so.
Is she bothering you? Asked her mother.
She's not exactly bothering me. Sometimes she does, but not all the time.
Good. That's one less thing to worry about.
Keep things to yourself until your mother feels better, unless it's urgent, okay?
Ada stared at Cherish until she answered.
Yeah, of course I can do that.
If there's something going on, you should tell me. Her mother raised her eyebrows and stared at her.
There's nothing going on, Mom. Trust me. Don't worry about anything here. Ada is taking care of everything, and so are all of us.
I'll have a sleep then, and go back to the hospital.
How's Bliss?
She's okay. I wanted her to come back for some sleep, too, but she wouldn't leave her father. I'll only sleep for a few hours, and then Carter said he'd take me back any time. Must be good to have a car service so close. Ada lifted the teacup to her lips.
What did they say caused his heart attack?
Asked Cherish, hoping it wasn't stress. They didn't say, and I didn't ask. Maybe they did say. I was too upset to listen to what they said. Bliss would know more. Cherish, go relieve them at the shop so they can have a break. I need to talk to your mother about Florence coming to help here in the orchard tomorrow. Florence is coming here? Wilma asked. Cherish grabbed the bag of taffy apples and walked out the door, while Ada was explaining that Florence wanted to help in the orchard. As she raised the handles of the wheelbarrow and headed down the driveway with the load of cider and the taffy apples, she wondered if she should forget matching Eddie and Caroline together. Eddie was nice, much nicer than Caroline. Her plan had been to get to know her better and find out what she liked in a man. But after their altercation just now, she didn't even want to talk with her. Chapter 12. After Florence got back from talking with Ada, she'd taken the opportunity to clean the house while Carter was out with Iris. Soon she'd have little time between caring for Iris and helping out next door. She didn't want to leave everything in Carter's lap. He was busy running his company and helping the architect design the new house. Just as she was finished cleaning the kitchen, she heard Carter's car. By the time she got to the window, Carter was leaning over getting Iris out of the car seat. Florence clicked the coffee machine on before she walked to the door and opened it. He smiled at her, with Iris fast asleep on his shoulder. "She's only just gone to sleep," he whispered. Florence knew that meant she had another free hour. He put the baby upstairs in the crib, and when he came back down, Florence had his coffee ready. They both sat at the island countertop. "How's Wilma coping with everything?" she asked as he took a mouthful. "She's tired. She looks worn out. I told her to call me when she wants to go back." "She's going back today?" Florence asked. "Yes." "Did you tell her that I offered to help in the orchard?" "No, I didn't. I wasn't sure, so I left it for Ada." "I hope she'll be okay with it. It's hard to tell with Wilma. She's a funny one. Ada was quite willing for me to help, which was nice. I arranged to go there at 8 in the morning." He placed his cup of coffee down on the counter, which doubled as his office desk. "Are you taking Iris, or leaving her here tomorrow?" "I'll take her with me." He tilted his head to one side. "How will you manage that?" Florence shrugged her shoulders. "I'll have to. I'll put her in the baby sling and put her on my back." "She's way too heavy for that now. What about seeing if Christina will mind her for the day?" "That would be a good idea, but it won't be for just one day. If Wilma agrees, it'll be ongoing until things are under control." "Just leave her here with me. It'll be fine." "Are you sure?" "Yes. I'll juggle my day around her naps. If there's any problem, I'll come find you. Better still, take your cell phone." "I will." Carter ran his fingertip around the top of the cup. It must be awful for you to see the orchard in a bad state after all your hard work.
It is. She took a sip of coffee.
The good thing is it's not too far gone. That's good.
What did you talk about with Wilma? He raised his eyebrows.
Do you mean, did she talk about the will?
Well, yes. That or anything else?
No, she didn't say a word about it.
I didn't expect that she would. I should call Earl.
You haven't done that yet?
No. I was waiting on news from Wilma. I'll do it soon, before Iris wakes.
After Florence had sat a while talking with Carter, she walked into the living room with her coffee and sat on the sofa. Then she leaned forward, placed her cup on the table, and picked up her cell phone. Earl's work number was programmed into the speed dial option. He answered.
Earl, it's Florence. Have you heard what's happened?
I don't think so. What's going on?
Levi's in the hospital. He's had a heart attack. There was silence for a couple of moments.
Is he going to make it?
I don't know. I think so. He's stable at the moment. Are you able to come here?
I didn't have any plans of going there for a long time. Do you need me?
I just thought Wilma could use the support.
I'm sorry, Florence. We've got so much work scheduled here, and someone's just quit yesterday, leaving us in all sorts of bother. I don't think Wilma will miss me.
I just thought if you were going to visit, it might be a good time. But don't worry about it.
If I visit, I'll be coming to see you and Carter and your baby, as well as Mark and Christina. I really don't have much interest in seeing Wilma.
I know she's done wrong things in the past, but don't you feel sorry for her?
I don't. Everyone I know has been through bad things, and she's been through no more than other people. It doesn't excuse what she's done. I'm not happy to hear about Levi, though. I'll pray for his recovery.
Thank you.
Did anyone else say anything about the will?
No, nothing's happened about that yet, which is understandable under the circumstances.
As soon as anything changes, give me a call. I'll come there if you need me, Florence, but I won't come there for anyone else.
Okay, that's fair.
Bye, Florence.
Bye, Earl.
Florence ended the call and placed the phone back on the coffee table just as Carter walked into the room. What did he say?
Basically that Wilma deserves everything she gets. She smiled. Not that bad, really, but he's not coming here. He has his reasons for resenting Wilma.
I heard you ask him to visit, but I couldn't see him doing that. There's no point, really, if he's not close with Levi.
I don't know. I thought it would be nice if the family could all be together again.
You're looking at life through rose-colored glasses. You keep wanting to go backwards in time. Your family is never going to be like it once was.
She stared into the dark liquid of what was left of her coffee. He was right. When her father died, everything changed. She managed to hold things together the best she could for years, but it had been so hard. She had known things would fall apart when she left. If she had stayed, though, she would have drowned. That was truly what it. Chapter 13. Bliss saw someone in the doorway and looked up, expecting to see a nurse or a doctor. She was excited to see that it was the man she loved, Adam Wangard. She jumped up and ran to him. He gave a low chuckle. She looked up into his face and saw him looking over at Levi, who was sleeping.
How is he?
He says he feels okay, just tired. I don't know whether it's the medication they gave him or the effect of what happened to him. He was tired before he came here.
I'm sorry this happened.
Me too. What are you doing here?
I came to see how you were doing and to check on Levi.
It's so good to see you. She looped her arm through his. Having him there made all the difference.
They told me you stayed here last night.
I did. Wilma and I stayed in the chairs. She's gone home now to get some sleep, and she wants me to go home when she comes back. But I can't.
Her gaze traveled to her father.
I can't leave him.
Have you had something to eat?
I had something before, from the cafeteria.
His lips lifted upward at the corners. I don't know whether I believe that.
I did.
I'll get you something.
That would be wonderful.
Stay here. Don't go anywhere.
Don't. Just sit with me. I don't want you to leave just now.
Okay. He pulled the chairs together and they sat down and held hands. What would happen if her father died? Would she stay living with Wilma and the girls, or would she go elsewhere to a relative? She couldn't leave the district. Adam had moved to be close to her. She wouldn't leave him. They were going to marry, she knew it. Still, he hadn't asked her. She shook her head, not wanting to think about the what-ifs. Then Bishop Paul and his wife Hannah appeared at the door. Bliss and Adam stood up and greeted them. How is he? The bishop pushed his heavy dark-framed glasses further up his nose.
He hasn't changed. He's still very tired. I think he's awake, just resting his eyes.
Why don't you both go out while we're here? Get a cup of coffee or go for a walk, Hannah said.
Oh, that would be good if I could have a quick bite to eat.
Yes, you do that. Hannah stared at Bliss. You look exhausted.
I'm a little tired. Thanks. I will go for a walk.
Bliss walked over to her father and leaned close to his ear.
I'll be back. Bishop Paul is here with Hannah. I'm just going to get something to eat.
Levi kept his eyes closed, and Bliss patted his hand. Then Bliss walked out with Adam. Where's the cafeteria? Adam asked.
It's on the ground floor. We could take the food away and have it back up here. There's a little room at the end of the corridor where visitors can go.
Okay, why don't we do that? She nodded.
I'd feel better if I was closer to him.
They bought their food and took it back up to the tea room. Bliss opened her egg and bacon toasted sandwich.
This looks so good. It's even got tomato sauce on it, just like ketchup, just like I like it.
I knew you'd like it. I know everything you like, and I remember it. She smiled at him before she took a big bite.
I hope the girls are looking after Cotton Ball.
They would be. Cherish would think to do that. Even though she can be annoying and brattish, she does think about things. Her mind is going all the time.
Yeah, thinking up her next scheme.
Bliss laughed, and it felt good to relax and think about something else rather than worrying about her father. Then she felt guilty for laughing when her father was so ill. She picked up the coffee and had 2 mouthfuls.
How's your new business doing?
We've got orders for the next few months, and we haven't even advertised. It's all been word of mouth.
I'm so pleased for you, Adam. You had a good idea, and you did something about it.
She looked at his tanned skin and his golden hair. He looked so unlike any of the boys she'd grown up with. He was the type of man she wanted to marry. She knew she'd be safe with him. She wasn't quite sure what he saw in an ordinary and plain girl like her. There were many other girls in the community, prettier, and they had better personalities, too. Still, she wasn't complaining. Do you want me to check on Cotton Ball? He asked.
Nay, don't worry. Don't go out of your way when you've got so many other things to do.
What can I do for you? There must be something.
Pray for Dot.
I've been doing that, and I'll continue to do it.
Thank you.
She finished her last mouthful just as he finished his last swallow of his coffee.
Thanks for the food.
I'd do anything for you, Bliss. Anything. She smiled at him and then got embarrassed as he leaned over to kiss her cheek. She stood up quickly.
I better get back to Dot. I don't know how long the bishop will be here. He's so busy, I don't want them to think I'm taking advantage.
I'll walk back to the room with you and then I'll go.
Okay.
If you're still here, I'll be back tomorrow, Adam said.
There's no need. There's really no need. It's so far for you to come. There's a phone in the room. I can give you the number of that so you can call me.
It's not that far.
Just call me instead, okay?
She looked up into his eyes, and he nodded. If that's what you want. When they got back to the room, the bishop stood. We should go now. I had a bit of a talk with him. He opened his eyes, and now it seems he's asleep.
Thanks for staying. Is there anything you need, Bliss? Hannah asked. Nay, not really. She kissed Hannah on the cheek, and Hannah and Bishop Paul left after they said goodbye to Adam. When they were gone, Adam looked over at Levi, and then he gave Bliss that quick and cheeky kiss on the cheek, which made Bliss smile. Where's that phone number? I'll write it down for you. Chapter 14. Florence was filling a jug with filtered water to make coffee when movement from through the window got her attention. Wilma was walking toward the cottage. Carter, it's Wilma. He closed his laptop and walked over to look out the window. She's by herself. She must be ready to go back to the hospital. I expected her to call. She didn't need to walk all this way. It's not that far, Florence said. I know, but she must want to see you. Otherwise, she would have called me. Florence was suddenly nervous. They both walked to the door just as Wilma was walking up the 2 front steps of the porch. Wilma looked up at them and managed a smile. Hello. How are you feeling? Asked Florence, as she walked forward to give her a quick hug. After their embrace, Wilma said, I'm feeling much better after a few hours' sleep. I'm hoping Bliss will come home, but I don't think she wants to leave her father's side. That's only natural, said Carter. Are you ready to go? I need to have a quick talk with Florence. Well, with both of you. Okay. We can sit in the living room. Iris is asleep. Still? She woke up and went back to sleep after feeding. As soon as they were seated, Wilma put the basket she'd been carrying down by her feet. You're right about what I did, Florence. I didn't mention the will. I didn't know what would happen if you came into your inheritance and had full control of things. Not only the orchard, but all our lives. Nothing would have changed, Wilma. Everything would have stayed exactly the same. Would it? I don't think so. She shook her head. Then she looked up at both of them again. What would have happened when you left to marry Carter? I would have worked something out. But Wilma, when you made your decision to hide the will, did you give consideration to Florence leaving one day? Was it even a thought you had? No, it wasn't. I often wondered if I was doing the right thing by concealing it, and then when you left, Florence, I felt I'd done the right thing. That's why I mentioned you leaving the community just now. Wilma placed her hands together. Now I have to make it right. How are you going to do that? Asked Carter. I just have to work something suitable out that you're both happy with. That's what Levi suggested I do. He said for me to fix things. I want to make everyone happy. Florence sat there wondering why they were all talking about people being happy and making things right, as though there was a big decision to make. The orchard was hers, Florence's. Her father had said so. It was black and white. Levi knows about this, you say? Carter asked. He does. He asked me twice at the hospital to fix it. He didn't say how. He's leaving it up to me. And what are you suggesting? Asked Florence. I don't know. I wondered if you two had some ideas. What if we pay you for the orchard, buy it officially, and you and your family continue to live there? Carter suggested. That is a very generous suggestion, but Levi would see that as someone giving him a handout. He knows now that the orchard was never really mine, and that means it was never really his. He wouldn't want to get something for nothing, or have someone to pay him, or me, for something that wasn't really ours. Do you see what I mean? Wilma, I've done very well for myself. I don't need much money to live. I don't need a flashy car or a mansion or a yacht. I just want to live a good life and have a strong foundation to raise our children so they have a normal upbringing. It would make me happy to share what I have with my family, and that includes you, Levi, and all your daughters. Florence was pleased to call Carter her husband. Thanks to his business, he was wealthy. They could have lived a very different lifestyle, but he wanted the simple things in life, and so did she. Carter was silent for a moment, and then suggested, How about we see the payment I make you as a fee for righting the wrong?
Then official ownership can pass to Florence. And of course, we'll pay any taxes or fees involved in the transaction. Then Levi would say that you should not be paying a fee for my mistake. As the husband, he should be doing that. Why don't you talk some of these suggestions over with Levi? Wilma nodded. I'm going to help out at the orchard tomorrow. I'll be there at 8. Thank you. You have a gift, Florence. You always knew what the orchard needed. It's not a gift. It's just experience, knowing what the trees and the soil need. I learned that from spending years with Dot and watching what he was doing. Carter jumped to his feet. Let's get you to the hospital, Wilma. We can work all this out later. Under the circumstances, it's not important. Both women stood to walk to the door. Florence hugged her stepmother once more. Thanks for coming over and trying to sort things out. Wilma's bottom lip trembled. You must think I'm a dreadful person. We don't. I think Florence and I both understand why you did it, Carter said. Thank you. That's very kind. She headed out the door while Carter gave Florence a quick kiss. He closed the front door, and then Iris started to cry. Florence walked upstairs to Iris. She picked her up and then looked out the window at her husband and his birth mother, both getting into the car. Wilma was a woman of many secrets. She'd hidden the fact that she'd adopted a baby out. She'd hidden the will. And all of that made Florence wonder if there were any more skeletons in Wilma's closet. Chapter 15. Hope had just finished serving a customer at the shop on the apple orchard when she noticed someone else in the doorway. She expected to see another customer, but it wasn't. It was Fairfax. She couldn't have been more pleased to see him. She hurried over. What are you doing here? I heard about Levi. He grabbed her hand. I'm sorry. Is there anything I can do? She turned around, and Caroline was the only person not serving anyone. I'm going out for a couple of minutes, Caroline. Okay. They walked around behind the shop. Ada's staying at the house, so we can't go up there to talk. It's all right. I only have a couple of minutes. Tell me what happened. All I know is that he's had some kind of heart attack. He's all right at the moment. They say he's stable. It's such a worry, especially after what happened to your father. Yes, it's mostly awful for Wilma, and of course for Bliss. It would be. They stayed with him last night in the hospital. Who, Bliss and Wilma? Yeah. Can I do anything? He asked once more. Dinka, but I don't think so. Everything's under control. The bishop hasn't been here yet, but I'm sure he's been at the hospital to see Dot and pray for him. She looked down. I mean, Levi. She shook her head. It's okay. You're allowed to call him Dot. But I don't even think of him like that. I always think of him as Levi. He's not my father, and I don't want to start calling him that. I just made a mistake, that's all. You're upset. It's understandable. I wish I could take you away somewhere, but I've got so much work to do on the farm all the time. You know what it's like. And I do need to make a good impression on the bishop so he'll let me join. You haven't got much longer, have you? It seems like forever. You'll get a job with Carter, won't you? Hope asked. I hope so. I don't want to be a dairy farmer, that's for certain. I want to do what I know, and I'm happy working in an orchard. I know. How are your folks? Good. I get a letter from them every couple of days telling me what they're doing and how they're settling in. Are they liking it there? My father does. My mother, not so much. She misses her horses, I'd say. She does. There's nothing that can be done about that. There's a place about 20 minutes from them where they go horseback riding. She even conned Dad into going last week. I'm sure they would have liked it. I think so. He looked into her eyes. I can't wait until we're married. I just want to do our own thing in our own place. It would be great. Maybe one day we can have a bed and breakfast. He laughed. Jane's not trying to sell the place to you, is she? No, but if I had the money, I'd love to buy it. Thanks for the warning. He laughed again. I don't know how we're going to save that much money. I've got none. How much have you got? She asked. None. We're a fine pair, but we have each other, so that's a start. It's a very good start. He picked up her hand and kissed it, making her tingle all over. Chapter 16. Cherish spied the two lovebirds, Hope and Fairfax, and then felt sorry for herself. It cheered her up that she was sneaking off that night to meet Daniel, the reporter. She was lonely now without Favor to talk with, and now that Bliss was staying in the hospital, her thoughts turned to her farm manager. His last letter had been disturbing. Everyone she'd showed the letter to had told her the same thing. Malachi liked her. His words were quite clear. He'd said he missed her and the talks they had when she was last there. She had enjoyed her time with him, but he was not the man for her. He was too rough around the edges, didn't talk correctly, and his handwriting was even worse. It was a problem. He wasn't a match for her at all, and it was inconvenient that he thought so. But he had to stay because she couldn't afford for him to leave. He'd be too hard to replace. Maybe liking her was an incentive for him. Incentive to stay there until she was old enough to move there and take over. So instead of writing a short and to-the-point letter back to him, telling him she had no interest in him, she would try the nice approach. She'd tell him how much she appreciated the work he was doing. Tonight, she would pen that letter. That night, after helping Adaa with the dinner cleanup, Cherish went to bed rather than play cards with the girls in the living room. Adaa had let them off making things for the shop, saying they all needed a rest after the shock about Levi. Cherish knew the real reason was that Adaa felt she'd have to supervise what they did, and she was too tired for that. Adaa was only used to looking after Samuel and visitors who often traveled to their community. She wasn't used to such a chaotic household, and that's what theirs had become. The girls weren't really interested in their card games. They were only filling in time until Adaa went to bed. Then Caroline would sneak out to smoke. That's what had happened nearly every single night since Caroline had arrived. The rest of the girls would follow her so they could gather around and gossip. Cherish was happy to close the door on everybody and all their problems. Why wasn't the orchard ever a peaceful place? There were always troubles, always arguments, always fighting. Her family wasn't a normal family, and she blamed her mother for that. It had started off with secrets, and secrets nearly ended the family, going by what happened with Levi. Cherish knew he could have died from that heart attack, and might still die. Cherish decided never to have any secrets from her children or her husband, assuming she ever married. She sat on her bed and pulled out a piece of paper and a pen from the top of her nightstand. Then, leaning the paper against her Bible for a solid surface, she started a letter. The letter was to Malachi. The ink flew along the page as she told him everything that had happened with Levi getting ill. And then she couldn't stop herself from writing about Wilma and the secrets she'd kept from everybody. She didn't mention them one by one, but she did tell him how her mother had hidden the will. Once she'd finished, the letter was more than just 1 page. It was 3 pages. She read it again and then wondered if she should send it. After taking a few moments to think about it, she decided it was probably safe enough because Malachi wouldn't tell anybody. He had nobody to tell. After she signed her name, she wrote a P.S. at the end. Please don't tell anybody anything in this letter. Rip it up and burn it when you're finished reading it. Then tell me about the farm in your next letter. She folded the 3-page letter, placed it in an envelope, addressed it, and then put it on the floor near her door so she wouldn't forget to mail it. The clock on her nightstand told her it was still 2 hours to go before she was to meet with Daniel. She flung herself on the bed, thinking about Daniel. Where would they go? Would they just sit in the car and talk? She trusted him enough to believe that he wouldn't do anything bad. He wasn't like that. He seemed trustworthy. Cherish's eyes flickered closed. The last few days had been tiring. Just as she was drifting off to sleep, she smelled smoke. She opened her eyes and saw her window was open slightly. That meant Caroline and the girls were now outside. Adaa must have gone to bed. Cherish opened her eyes again and realized she must have dozed off. She sat and quickly looked around at her small clock. It was 10 minutes past 10, and he'd said he'd wait 15 minutes. She opened her door and then saw Caramel lying there.
Inside, Caramel. He jumped on her bed and settled immediately, and she closed the door on him. If she didn't do that, he would have followed her. It was quiet as she ran down the stairs and through the darkened house. There was no sign of anyone. She crept out the door, ran down the driveway, and just as she got out onto the road, the lights of a car nearly blinded her. She shielded her face, and then the car stopped beside her. A car door opened. "Get in," she heard Daniel say. She climbed inside and pulled the door closed. "There you are. I was just about to leave." "Sorry, I fell asleep. I only just woke up." He sped away. "Where are we going?" "I don't know. Anywhere. Thanks for coming to meet me." He smiled at her. "How could you fall asleep? It's so early." "I don't know. I've had a big day." "Yeah, I'm sorry about your father." "Stepfather." "Yeah, that's what I meant." "I hope he'll be okay. It'll be so sad for Bliss otherwise. When my father died, at least I had my mother. If Levi dies, she won't have a mother or a father. But she is close to my mother, so that will make her feel better. And she has all of us."
"She's not so bad off then."
"Yeah, but I hope it doesn't happen."
"Is Caroline still staying at the orchard?" And there it was. It didn't take long at all for the conversation to get around to Caroline.
"Yeah, she'll be there for a bit longer, staying with us, I guess. I thought it would be a good idea that she went home, but everyone thinks it'll be good to have extra hands around the place to do some of the work."
"And you? You don't seem to get along with Caroline very well."
"I did at first. She's all right, I suppose, yes. She gets a bit annoying sometimes, but everyone annoys me at different times."
He laughed. "You are a funny girl, Cherish Baker."
"And what new stories are you doing?"
"I can't catch a break. They keep giving me useless stories."
"Like what?"
"I had to make up a story about a pet grooming service. Can you believe that?"
"What do you mean you had to make it up?"
"The owner did some favor for the editor, and then the editor wants me to do a favor back. I mean, how can I make a story about grooming pets interesting and earth-shattering? It's only a pet grooming service, where rich people go and take their pets to be groomed, clipped, and whatever else they do with them."
"I'm sure you can make it interesting."
He glanced over at her. "Thanks for your confidence. But the most obscure thing they've done is dyeing someone's white poodle pink." He shook his head. "Scandalous. That's not going to make the major newspapers in New York sit up and take notice of me."
"I guess not."
"There wasn't even a good picture. The pink washes out, and there's only the owner's cell phone pictures, which aren't good."
"And what other stories have they given you?"
"You don't want to know."
"Yes, I do, or I wouldn't have asked."
"Since it's a local paper, they want to encourage local businesses to do advertising. So every time I do a story, they advertise in the paper."
"Oh, is that what Levi should have done?"
"I'm sure the people asked him, but he didn't do any ads. But I don't think they gave him a time the article would be in the paper, come to think of it. So no, they wouldn't have asked him."
"He probably wouldn't have done that anyway. We don't really need to advertise. All we need is a good crop every year, and we have no problem selling all the apples and as much produce as we can make. We once had a stall at the farmer's market, and I really enjoyed that. We got out nearly every day and met so many new people, and got to know all the stall holders. It was fun."
"Why aren't you doing that anymore?"
"It's a long, boring story."
"I've heard way too many of those. I'll give it a miss, so please don't tell me. How do I get a good story, Cherish? If I don't, I fear my life will never change. I might even get fired."
"They wouldn't do that, would they?"
"Yes. I'm already in trouble, even though that other thing wasn't my fault. One more strike and I'll probably be out."
"I don't know. I guess you'll have to investigate something. Something interesting that people want to know about."
"Do an exposé?"
"If you say so."
When they were halfway into town, he pulled up the car under a streetlight and turned off the engine. "There, now I can see you while we talk." She smiled at him, and he smiled back. "I'm sorry for all my work talk."
"That's okay. I love to hear about it."
"What do you think caused Levi's heart attack? Did he find out some shocking news? Was he stressed?" Cherish had shared what happened with the will with Malachi, but she wouldn't be silly enough to tell Daniel. But his pointed question made her think someone else might have said something to him. Caroline, possibly? Maybe she overheard something she shouldn't have.
Now you're acting like a reporter with all these questions.
Are you satisfied with your life, Cherish?
No, I can't wait to get away and live on my own. I've always felt like an adult, even when I was 10 years old. The only difference between me and any adult I've seen is nothing. There is no difference.
I think that people never really grow up. They're still the same. Sure, they've learned a few more things, but that's it. It's all head knowledge. You learn how to behave, how to be polite, how to treat people, how to call the power company to get the power connected when you move into an apartment. Cherish burst out laughing, wondering when he would kiss her. Would he? Chapter 17. Daniel smiled at Cherish as they sat in the dark car. It's true. Nobody ever really grows up. Everyone's still the same as an 8-year-old child. She looked over at him. Even in the dark, it was easy to see he was handsome.
I haven't thought of it like that.
It's true. That's why you felt grown up at 10 years old, because everybody stays that age. He looked over and smiled, and that made her laugh again.
So everyone's a child acting like an adult?
Exactly. That's what it is when it all comes down to it. You learn what society expects of you and you behave that way. Don't break the law. Don't go through a red light. Don't do anything that would land you in jail. Don't throw a tantrum in the supermarket, because adults don't do that. It's all the things you learn over time.
That's a very interesting view of the world.
She was upset he wasn't making a move. Why had he wanted her to sneak out at night? They could have talked during the day. She wasn't going to make the first move. Yeah, I guess I'm a deep thinker. I think of things like that when I'm doing those dreadful stories they give me. I'm in the car a lot, driving around, and that's when I think of things.
And what did they say when you asked for better stories?
They say I've got to pay my dues. They reckon they'll give me something more interesting when they think I can handle it.
Well, isn't that fair enough?
No. I do the story to the best of my ability, but how can you make anything good out of it?
Yeah, like trying to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear.
What?
Nothing. It's something they say in the Bible. Or, that is, said in the Bible.
Ah, yeah. I think I've heard of that before, but I'm not so sure it's from the Bible.
Anyway, I think they're just making you wait until you've suffered enough small stories, and then they'll give you something better. Don't give up.
I feel like giving up. I feel like moving to New York now.
You can't.
He looked at her. Why not?
Because we wouldn't be able to meet for coffee.
He threw his head back and laughed. Well, there is that. I do enjoy our talks, Cherish. You're so open and honest, and that's what's missing in the girls I usually meet. They're mostly concerned about how they look. Cherish wondered what he meant by that remark. Did he mean that she didn't look good? She straightened her cop.
Is there something wrong with the way I look?
No, far from it. You're a very attractive woman. Anyone would think so. Cherish was relieved. She thought she looked okay, but she didn't know how other people saw her.
It's just that you thought I should worry about the way I look. I mean, if other people do.
I didn't mean that at all. They worry about their image and taking Instagram shots.
Maybe you're meeting the wrong kind of girls.
No, they're all like that these days.
I'm not.
Yeah, but you're Amish. Now Cherish knew that he wouldn't even consider her as a girlfriend.
Yeah, I'm Amish now, but I may not always be if I change my mind in the future.
He raised his eyebrows. You'd leave?
I could. I could go on Rumspringa.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
None of my sisters went on a Rumspringa.
Why's that?
They got married really young. My 3 older sisters did. Hope's engaged, and not counting our half-sister, that only leaves me in favor.
Aren't you moving to your farm as soon as you're old enough?
Sure am. That's the plan. Favor wants to go with me, but now she's friends with Caroline, so I don't know what she's going to do. We haven't been that close since Caroline arrived.
Ah, that's why you don't get along with Caroline. You're jealous. He poked her in the ribs. She giggled and slapped his hand away.
I am not.
Are too. You're jealous that she's taking your sister away. The only sister you have left that's not married or engaged.
There's still Bliss, the one with the rabbits, but she'll probably marry Adam Wengert as soon as she's old enough.
Boy, you Amish people sure get married really young.
Why not, when you find the right person? Why wait?
I guess you're right about that. Daniel yawned.
I guess I should go home.
He turned his body further toward her. I think you're a great girl, Cherish. Thanks for coming out tonight.
I enjoyed it.
She thought he was going to lean over and kiss her, but he didn't. Nothing. Instead, he turned to face the front and started the motor. Then he made a U-turn and headed back the way they'd come. When he stopped the car, she opened the car door, still expecting he wouldn't let her go without a kiss. But he didn't do or say anything.
I'll see you later, Daniel.
Yeah, Cherish. Please call me. I can't really call you. You call me. I want to see you again soon. Cherish got out of the car and closed the door. He drove away. She walked up the driveway, wondering whether he liked her or not. It was odd he didn't even lean over and give her a kiss on her cheek. Just as she was halfway up the driveway, a light in the house went on. Then the front door opened, and Adaa stepped out. Cherish was about to duck to one side when a flashlight shone directly on her. It was too late. She'd just been caught by Adaa. Chapter 18. There was no use running. Cherish walked up to Adaa, steeling herself for being yelled at. Surely Adaa wouldn't hit her or give her some foul punishment. She wasn't Ada's child, but the woman had been left in charge. Adaa had never hit any of them, but there was always a first time.
I'm sorry, Adaa.
Adaa was surprisingly meek. Where have you been?
Out for a walk.
Adaa switched off the flashlight. At night? Cherish looked up at the sky, knowing Adaa wouldn't believe one word of what she was about to say.
Yeah, the moon is so beautiful, and so is the sky. I was admiring Gott's handiwork.
Don't bring Gott into this. Let's sit on the porch. Cherish was unnerved by Ada's behavior as she followed her to the porch. Once they were both seated, Cherish asked,
Why are we sitting here? It's late. We've both got to get up early.
Cherish, I don't believe you were walking. You were with a man just now. Has your mother told you how baplis are made?
Oh, Adaa, nay, it was nothing like that.
Adaa kept staring at her. Has she told you?
Nay, my sisters have told me about that kind of stuff.
She covered her ears. It was awkward that Adaa even mentioned it. She'd rather get a beating than hear all this. I just want to save you from making a dreadful mistake, one that you can't take back. That gift should be for your husband. Cherish couldn't take it any longer.
Okay, I did meet someone, and I'll tell you why.
Adaa grimaced.
It's nothing like what you think. I'd never do anything like that. I'm not that kind of girl. You see, I had to stop something very bad from happening.
What? Cherish thought fast. It crossed her mind to tell Adaa about the will that Wilma hid, to divert the attention off herself. But she couldn't do that to her mother. Besides, Wilma had already told Adaa by now.
Someone from this house told a certain reporter about the child Wilma had before she was married. He was going to make a story out of it.
Ada's mouth dropped open. In the newspaper?
That's right. It would have gone into the newspaper. But I've just spent half an hour talking to him and giving him every good reason I could to drop the story.
Is he dropping it?
Yeah, he finally agreed he wouldn't write or print it.
Who told him about Wilma?
I can't name names, but it's the same person who's throwing herself at Hope and Bliss's boyfriends.
Caroline. Cherish shrugged her shoulders.
You said it, not me.
Cherish had based her story around the truth, because Caroline had mentioned Wilma's history and how Carter was involved with their family. The difference was that Caroline hadn't named names. Adaa narrowed her eyes. Then why did you have to talk with him so late?
It's not late for a reporter. They run their presses at night, so they have the latest news in the morning. Also, if you meet with someone in person, it's better than over the phone.
I do believe that. I don't like talking on the telephone.
Cherish smiled at Adaa. Now can I go to bed?
I can see why you don't get along with Caroline.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want to say anything and worry everyone.
Come here, Cherish. Adaa lifted up her arms for a hug. Cherish leaned into her and hugged her.
I'm sorry I woke you. I sneaked out so I wouldn't disturb anyone.
Caramel was scratching at your bedroom door to get out. The poor thing was closed inside. I saw you weren't there, in bed where you were supposed to be. Anyway, you can go to bed now. I'll sit here for a few minutes. It is a nice night. Cherish stood up.
Good Nacht, Adaa.
Night, Cherish. Cherish made her way carefully up the dark stairs to her bedroom, surprised she'd got off that one so easily. Chapter 19. The next day, Cherish was surprised to see Adam Wangard arrive in a wagon with his friend, Andrew Weeks. Bliss was still at the hospital, so why was Adam there? It was 7:30, and she was to help Florence at 8. She ran out of the house to see what was going on. When she got closer, she saw he was standing by the horses with his friend, and in the back of the wagon was a stack of wire frames.
What's that you've got there, Adam?
Surprise, surprise. She thinks I've forgotten or something, but I didn't forget. We were just making it. He jumped down. Before we made anything, I told Andrew we'd make a cage for Cotton Ball.
She'll be so excited about that.
Hello, Cherish. Andrew gave her a wave.
Hello, Andrew. Thank you for doing this. I've been looking after Cotton Ball.
Cherish was greatly annoyed to see Caroline walking over.
Caroline, you are supposed to be working at the shop today. Not until 8. And you start work at 8, too.
She looked up at the sky.
It might rain and scare all our customers away. Then I'll have nothing to do all day.
Hi, Caroline, Adam said with a smile.
Hello, Adam. And it's Andrew Weeks, Cherish told her. Surely you remember Andrew from the meetings and the singings, Caroline. I do, but I've met so many nice people, it's hard to remember everyone's names.
Caroline walked over to the back of the wagon where they were unloading.
What's this?
An enclosure for Bliss's rabbit, Adam told her.
That's nice. I hope it doesn't rain when you're putting it up.
That won't stop us. We have to get this up this morning so we can go back and get some real work done, Andrew said. Adam chuckled. Yeah, some paying jobs.
So you've got some paying jobs lined up? Caroline asked, before Cherish had a chance to inquire.
We do. We're going to be very busy. We haven't needed to go looking. The customers have come to us. Adam couldn't keep the smile from his face as he told them.
Well, then, you're both doing okay, and you're going to be very rich.
Caroline flashed her perfect white teeth, while her golden hair looked even lighter in the early morning sun. Adam glanced at her and then continued unloading. Yeah, I don't really want to be rich. I just want to have enough. Enough for Bliss and me to live off. Cherish couldn't stop smiling when he said that, and she looked over at Caroline to see she didn't look too happy.
Are the two of you getting married? Caroline asked.
I reckon we might be. Caroline's eyebrows rose.
There's no need to rush into things, is there?
I reckon there might be. Before Bliss works out, she can do a lot better than him. Andrew roared laughing at his own joke. Adam frowned. When everything was off the truck, Adam said, I saw Bliss yesterday. She seemed okay. I might see her again tonight.
I would love to go too,
Caroline said, smiling at him. But he was standing the wire frames up and didn't seem to notice.
I'll get Carter to drive us there, Cherish said to Caroline. Perhaps we should go and let these men do their work. I'll make some hot chocolate for you both, Caroline said.
That would be wunderbar, denke, Adam said, before he looked at Cherish. This can be moved anywhere, but I don't want it to be in the way. Where should I set it up for now?
Just near the barn, over there.
Perfect. Cherish and Caroline walked back to the house.
Tell me if this is right, Caroline stated. Adam only returned to this community when he got a letter from Bliss. But it wasn't from Bliss. It was from you.
Cherish glared at her. She was trying to put that mistake behind her and forget it, and Caroline already knew it was true. Caroline continued.
The letter you wrote must have been a firecracker, because he returned for the girl who wrote it. You're annoyed because he fell in love with Bliss and not you, even though you wrote the letter.
Caroline cackled.
I was wrong, young and stupid. It was only a few months back.
Cherish stopped walking, and Caroline stopped too.
Have you never made an error, Caroline? I know you've told lots of lies. Not as big as the ones you've told.
Caroline pushed some strands of golden hair from her face.
I made a mistake, and everyone's moving on. I suggest you do the same. Don't bring it up again. You can't tell me what to do, Cherish. You wouldn't let me talk to Adam just now, and you kept butting in. Don't think that I didn't notice. What's wrong with you? Nothing. He's Bliss's boyfriend. Don't go getting ideas. What, like you? Don't judge other people by yourself, Cherish Baker. I was simply being friendly.
Caroline walked off before Cherish could say another thing. All she could do was watch Caroline walk to the house and hope she'd trip and fall over. She didn't, of course. Chapter 20. Bliss had to talk about what she'd heard to get Wilma's side of the incident. Could her father have made some mistake?
Mom, I'm sorry, but I overheard something that you were talking to Dot about.
And what was that? Wilma drew her lips together tightly.
It was about a will, and something about Florence. I kind of heard most of it.
Wilma's shoulders lowered. It seems everybody will know soon. I did a dreadful thing, but I did it for the right reasons.
What did you do exactly?
Wilma told her everything. I have to accept responsibility for it. It doesn't matter what my reasons were. It doesn't change what's been done. And I can't turn back the clock. And if I did, I don't know if I wouldn't do the same again.
So you're not truly sorry, then?
Right now, Bliss, I don't know what I am. Everyone is shocked and disappointed with me. When the girl's father died, I was left with 6 of our children and 3 from his first marriage, and the orchard. I did what I thought was best.
But what would have been so bad if Florence had the orchard?
I don't know. I didn't know back then, and neither did I want to find out. Bliss looked into Wilma's green-brown eyes and felt sorry for her. She'd been through a lot. She patted her stepmother's hand.
It doesn't matter now. All that matters is that Dot gets well, yeah?
That's right. We need to get him better and out of this hospital.
I hope he can go home soon. I know he'd rather be home.
Wilma sighed. Everyone is going to judge me.
Judge not, lest ye be judged.
Wilma's lips turned up at the corners. That doesn't stop it from going on. Everyone will have their own opinion of me. For those who like me, they will doubt I'm a good person. For those who don't like me, it will be proof for them that their opinion is correct.
You shouldn't think about it like that. Does it really matter what other people think?
Of course it does. It's everything.
But why did you do it? I'm trying to understand. Did you think Florence would take the orchard and sell it or something? Or leave everyone with no money?
Maybe I thought all of those things and then some. It was easier and safer just to hide that will away. Then I'd never have to worry about what the future would hold. I've been without enough to feed myself and my young son. That's why I had to give him away. I never wanted to be in that position again, not with all the kinner I had to take care of. Can you understand that?" When Bliss hesitated, Wilma said, "Nay, you wouldn't understand because you're not a mudder, and you've probably never gone to sleep with an aching belly wanting food."
I will be a mudder someday, and I kind of understand why you did what you did.
"Dinka, Bliss, you're a very kind girl. You'll make a wonderful mudder one day."
I hope so. I want 6 children, just like you.
Wilma put her hand over her mouth and laughed. "Why stop at 6? Why not have 12?
I'd be pregnant forever if I had 12. Nay, 6 suits me just fine. I've always liked even numbers, too.
I'm pleased you understand me. All I've done is try to survive and do what's best for my girls." Bliss nodded and noticed that Wilma hadn't included Florence as being one of her girls. Adaa had tried to stop Cherish from going to the cafe on Friday until Cherish told her she was meeting Eddie when her shift finished, and he was driving her home, too. Adaa only relented when Cherish agreed that she'd donate all of her tips to charity. Every single dime. The woman drove a hard bargain. When it was nearing the end of Cherish's shift, she kept looking at the clock, waiting for her new friend, Eddie the beekeeper. He was nice because he didn't dismiss her as a child, and he'd talk to her as an adult. If Cherish's plan worked, she'd finally be free of Caroline, and then she could get Favor back, and her sister's boyfriends would be safe. Just when she thought Eddie might have forgotten, he stepped into the cafe. He spotted her and waved. She rushed over to him. "Sit here." She pulled out a chair at the first table she came to. The lunch crowd had left, and there were only 2 people in the place. He picked up the menu. "What do you suggest?" Then he looked up at her. "Are you sitting down with me?"
Yes, I've got about 5 minutes until my shift finishes, but that's okay. I'll just tell them I'm clocking off now.
"I can wait 5 minutes."
No, don't move. I'll be back in 1 minute.
Cherish rushed over and told Rocky, her boss, that she was going to sit down with someone and was finished for the day. He didn't mind, because she often worked through her breaks when they were busy, as they all did. Rocky wasn't going to worry about 5 minutes here or there. She grabbed her coat and bag and sat down with Eddie, pushing her belongings under the table. "What do you recommend?" he asked, still studying the menu.
Are you hungry?
"Not especially."
What about a milkshake or coffee? I think you look like a coffee man. Extra shot with cream, no sugar.
He shook his head. "Not too keen on the coffee. I think I'll just have a chocolate milkshake."
It's not often that I'm wrong about the choice of someone's beverage. What would you like to eat? The apple pie is not as good as we make at home, she whispered. I'll have to bring you an apple pie when we visit. Better yet, Caroline might even make you one.
His eyes lit up. That would be cool. He looked down at the menu. "What's the lemon cake like?"
Delicious. Everyone loves it.
"Okay, I'll have that." One of Cherish's waitress friends took their order. Cherish ordered lemon tea and nothing to eat. He got out his wallet, and Cherish put her hand over it.
My treat. I get a discount.
"No, I insist." He pulled out a 50 and gave it to the waitress.
You didn't need to do that,
Cherish told him when the waitress left. "I don't want you paying for me. That wouldn't be right. That's not how I was raised. You always look after a lady."
I like the sound of that, and I think Caroline will too.
He smiled, revealing his dimples even more. Cherish leaned closer.
Here's what I think we should do. Show us your beehives and how you make the honey.
"We don't make it, the bees do." She laughed.
I knew that. Maybe Caroline won't know because she's a city girl, more or less. Take us on a tour and tell us all those things. Make it Monday afternoon, and I'll bring Caroline and the others. I'll tell Adaa we all need a break. We've had so much going on, and by that time I would have talked her into it.
He rubbed his jaw. "Monday afternoon?"
Yes.
"I think I can handle that."
Good. It's a chance to really get to know her. She'll see you in your environment doing what you do best.
Yes. Now tell me more about her. Caroline was attractive, but anybody could see that. As for her personality, she was spoilt, always wanted her own way, and she was manipulative.
I think she needs a man like you.
Tell me what she's interested in.
All the usual things women are interested in, I guess. The waitress brought their food and drinks on a tray, and then she gave him back the change. Once the waitress walked away, Eddie slid a $10 bill under the salt and pepper shakers.
I'll leave that as the tip.
Thanks.
Cherish grabbed the cash and pushed it in her bag before the other waitress saw it. Then she noticed Eddie staring at her.
What?
Did you really just do that?
What? She repeated.
That's a tip for the waitress, the one who served us just now.
I know, but if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have come here at all.
He scratched the side of his head. Well, that's a bit embarrassing. I wanted to leave that waitress the tip because she's the one who served us. Cherish rolled her eyes, took the money out of the bag, and put it back under the salt and pepper shakers.
There. Are you happy now?
He grinned. You're a character, Cherish. Cherish was almost too upset to speak. She could have used that $10 to add to her tips for Ada's charity of choice. It had been a slow day, tips-wise.
How's your milkshake?
Nice and thick, and that's how I like it.
Good. Can you drive me home after this?
Sure. Tell me something else about Caroline.
You have to wait and see what you think of her for yourself. I'm sure you will like her. Everyone likes her.
Thanks so much for arranging this for me, Cherish. You're very kind. I'll owe you one.
No, you won't. Don't be silly. I just like to see people happy.
Then Cherish spent the rest of their time together, telling him how to act in front of Caroline and what to say. Chapter 21. Florence was disturbed about how much work was not being done in the Baker apple orchard. Ada had let Cherish go to the cafe on Friday, and thus Florence only had Favor working with her. This was a double handicap, as Favor didn't work as fast or as enthusiastically as Cherish. Then on Saturday, she only had Cherish with her for 2 hours in the morning before the shop got so busy that she was needed there. Now it was Sunday, the day of rest, so no work would be done in the orchard or anywhere. Florence looked at Carter over their breakfast in the kitchen. As soon as Iris goes to sleep, I'll go next door and get some things done. They're not doing anything on a Sunday, and I'm not going to let you do it. But there's so much to be done. Hey, my dear wife, Iris and I missed you yesterday and all of last week. It's not exactly your orchard at this point, so if they're not helping you, I don't want you doing it on your own. Florence sighed. I know you hate it when things aren't done. You want to get in there and finish everything. That's true, Florence sighed. Try to have some patience. You're right. I'll try to relax. It's just hard when everything's just turned upside down for Wilma and the girls. I feel like I need to be doing something to help them. You are. So am I, driving Wilma to and from the hospital. Just relax. It's only one day. It's not going to make a difference in the grand scheme of things, but it'll make a difference to your peace of mind if you calm down. Okay, I'll do my best to put it out of my mind. Carter leaned over the table and kissed her. Let's get out today and do something as a family. Let's visit the playground. Florence laughed. Iris is too young for that. Let's take her to a park, somewhere she can watch the ducks or swans on a pond. I know just the place. I'll pack us a picnic. Florence was grateful for Carter. What would she have done without him? Cherish was trying to get a quiet moment alone with Hope, but it wasn't easy. Samuel had collected Ada so they could travel to the meeting at the bishop's house together, and the rest of them traveled in the one buggy. Cherish had hoped that Favor and Caroline would have gone with Samuel and Ada, but the more she hinted about that, the more they resisted. Her chance to talk with Hope came when they had parked the buggy and were walking to the house. Favor and Caroline had gone ahead. Hope, I've had a good idea. Hope glanced at Cherish. I don't like the sound of it already. What is your idea about?
I've decided that Caroline would be well matched up with Eddie.
Hope made a face. Eddie? I don't know an Eddie.
You do. He's the beekeeper's son from over the back.
Oh, him? You can't be serious.
I'm dead serious. Why do you say that? What do you even know about him?
He's so young. Way too young for her.
Nay, he's not. He was probably young the last time you saw him, but we were much younger too back then. Have you seen him lately? He's the same age as she is, or older. He's not that good looking, but he's got a certain way about him. He's confident and a bit funny. Maybe he is handsome in a way. He's got a kind face.
I remember him as a skinny kid.
He came to the house the other day. He drives a car, smokes, and everything.
He smokes? Cherish nodded. So just because he smokes and he's an Englisher, you think he's a good match for Caroline?
I know she's looking for a boyfriend. I know because of the way she looks at Fairfax.
That got her attention. Hope raised her eyebrows. How does she look at him?
Like in the way that you wouldn't want to know about.
Oh. Hope breathed out heavily. I did notice something, but I didn't know if it was my imagination or not. You think she likes Fairfax?
I do, and I just need a little bit of help to distract her. I'm not asking you to do much.
What kind of help?
I want her to visit him, to go with me when I try to match them up. I'm going to say he asked me to go there to look at his bees and watch how he collects the honey.
Go on.
When I tell Adaa about that at the dinner table tonight, all you need to do is say, "Cherish, wasn't that invitation for all of us?" That's all. You see, if Caroline thinks I don't want her to go, that'll make her want to go.
That's really all I have to say?
Yeah, can you remember it?
Cherish, wasn't that invitation for all of us? Hope practiced. Cherish giggled.
That's it. Say it just like that.
Very clever.
Well, it's not that clever.
Probably not.
We'll be going there Monday afternoon, if I get Adaa to agree, and I think I can.
I don't know, Cherish. There's so much work to be done on the orchard.
Yeah, but we need a break, don't we? And where would we be without Eddie's bees? We have to be neighborly.
You reckon you can talk Adaa into it?
I do. Just remember what you need to say.
I will.
I'll say the invitation wasn't for all of us. You insist that it was. That will get Caroline's interest. Trust me, I know what she's like.
And then you think that she will insist on going too?
Yeah. And then you can help by saying to Adaa, all the girls have been working so hard that we need a break. Blah, blah. Just follow my lead. You'll know what to do.
I do like honey.
Everyone likes honey, except for people who are allergic. Other than that, I don't know another person who doesn't like honey.
Okay, I'll help out. Do you really think she likes Fairfax?
Have you looked at him lately? Who wouldn't like him?
Hope smiled. That's true. Then Hope stopped walking and the smile left her face. You said you didn't like him.
I do, but not in that way. We've always been friends. You know that.
I'll take your word for it.
Cherish added, "Anyway, the only person he loves is you."
Good. They looked up at the house and saw everybody heading inside. The meeting was about to start. Cherish walked into the house, hoping her little plan would pay off. Then Hope nudged her in the ribs. Hey, why are you doing this?
I just like to see people happy, that's all.
Hope stared at her, unconvinced. Cherish didn't care and found a seat at the back where she could observe everyone. Before the meeting began, people came up to the girls to inquire about Levi. They had a limited amount of information to give them. All they could say was that he had a heart attack and was expected home soon. That seemed to satisfy them, as no one asked more than that. One of the deacons stood and opened with a word of prayer. At the end, he mentioned Levi and asked for a speedy recovery. Everyone added an amen. Throughout the bishop's sermon, Cherish kept looking over at Caroline. She had to be bored. Why was she staying in this community? Cherish couldn't figure it out unless it was to feel like she was in a family. She saw her looking over in the direction of the men's side of the room, but she couldn't see who Caroline was staring at. It was hard to tell, since Fairfax and Adam Wengard were sitting close to each other. Then she looked down to rest her eyes for a while, because the glare coming in through the open window was starting to hurt her eyes. Even the bishop was turning to one side to avoid the early morning sun streaming through the window. Why didn't someone pull down the blind? Cherish then looked down and noticed her apron was dirty. She'd put a clean one out ready to wear, but had forgotten to change into it. She spread her hands over her apron, hoping no one would notice. When the meeting was over, the girls helped put the food out, and they also stayed afterward to clean up. Adaa had volunteered them. Caroline, of course, got off that duty, saying that people wouldn't be pleased that she was helping, even though Adaa had assured her that no one would mind. She'd sat herself down in a chair in the corner of the bishop's yard, and it wasn't long before a couple of young men came up to talk to her, which was her plan, obviously. It had to be. Chapter 22. Once they got home from the Sunday meeting, Cherish offered to make Adaa a cup of tea. Hope was out somewhere with Fairfax, and Caroline and Favor were upstairs in their room. Cherish considered it a good chance to get Adaa on side for the beekeeping visit tomorrow. If she forbade them to go, it would be a disaster. Everything was already planned. Cherish handed the teacup to Adaa and then sat down with her.
Adaa, I want to talk to you about something.
Go ahead. Adaa sipped her tea.
You know how Caroline is interested in some Amish men?
Yeah.
I think she should find a nice Englisher.
I agree.
You do?
Yeah.
That's great. I'll need your help with that.
Adaa frowned and set the teacup and saucer down on the table in front of her.
What are you talking about? If it's okay with you, and I'm hoping it will be, I've arranged a little outing for Caroline and us girls. To the beekeepers. I think she'd be a good match with Eddie, and that's my plan. Let us all go to Eddie's Monday afternoon. It's organized, and Eddie knows we're coming. All we need is for you to say yes.
Cherish held her breath. That's tomorrow. What about the work? What about the shop? Florence is coming here and needs people to help.
It'll only be for a couple of hours, 2 at the most, and it is for a good cause. I do have a good feeling that Caroline and Eddie will get along, but I think she won't want to go, so I'll have to pretend that I want to go by myself. Then she'll want to go.
Do you think so? It all sounds very confusing.
Yeah, but it'll work.
It's deception.
In the Bible, Jacob and his mother deceived Jacob's father into giving him the blessing for the birthright.
Yeah, but Jacob didn't have an easy life. Was it God teaching him a lesson? Cherish knew she was in over her head.
I don't know. It's not a big deception. I'm just pretending I don't want her to go. What's the harm in that? Can we go? Please, please, please?
Ada's eyes turned upward to the ceiling as she thought. There's no harm that I can see. Only if it's just this once, and only for 2 hours.
Good. Then you'll allow us to go?
Adaa sighed. It will be best that Caroline stays away from the men your sisters like. I do agree with that.
I know, right?
Adaa nodded.
Okay, I'll do the talking over dinner. Follow my lead.
Adaa held her head. I'm not sure if I should be getting involved with all this.
It's not for me. It's for Bliss and for Hope. Also, it's good for Caroline, because Eddie's a really good guy for an Englisher.
He is nice. I like Eddie. Okay, I'll do it. Cherish's opinion of Adaa changed. She wasn't so bad after all. Chapter 23. That night, the girls and Adaa sat down for a dinner of reheated leftovers. There was never an elaborate meal on a Sunday, as the minimum work was done since it was a day of rest. When the conversation started, Cherish tried to get Hope's attention so she could start talking, but Hope was so busy shoveling food into her mouth that she didn't look up. Cherish cleared her throat.
Adaa, I have something to ask you.
What is it this time, Cherish? Do you want to go back to the farm? Do you want a whole week off to sleep? You feel sick? What could possibly be the problem?" Cherish was taken aback at how good an actress Adaa was. She was really good at this. None of those things," Cherish answered. "Let's hear it then, and we'll see how far away from the truth I am."
"I just wanted to ask you if I can visit our lovely neighbor, Eddie. He wants to show me his beehives."
Adaa gave Caroline a sidelong glance. "Beehives, you say? That sounds fascinating." Now Adaa was overdoing it a little. Cherish frowned at her to give her the hint not to be so eager.
"We really do owe them quite a bit, you know."
Adaa, taking the hint, groaned. "Cherish, they're just bees."
"Yeah, but without them, things wouldn't be good for the orchard. People don't really give thought to bees, but have you ever stopped to think how important they are? Without them, there would be no life, because there would be no food. No fruit, no vegetables, no honey even."
"That's true. I agree," said Hope, looking up from her food. "What you're saying is true, but what does this have to do with what you want to ask me?" Adaa asked.
"I thought I said it already. Eddie invited me to his place tomorrow, and he's going to show me the whole honey-making production. And I thought it would be rude to say no, considering how his bees are so important to our orchard."
Adaa shook her fork at Cherish. "I hope you haven't told him you can go. We've so much work here."
"I would never do that. I know I have to ask you. I said I'd let him know."
This was the moment Hope was supposed to say her bit. Cherish stared at her, only to see she was busy carefully slicing the fat off a piece of meat. Cherish kicked her under the table. That got her attention. Hope looked up. "Cherish, was the invitation for you and you alone? Because I'm sure I remember him asking all of us girls. He asked for all of us to go, and not just you. Isn't that right?" Favor said.
"But Hope, you weren't here when Eddie and his father visited."
Cherish held her breath. "That's true, I wasn't. But I do remember Cherish telling me about it." Cherish breathed out slowly. Hope had saved the day with her quick thinking. Adaa glared at Cherish. "Truth now, was the invitation for all of you?" Cherish hung her head, trying to stop smiling.
"Yeah, I just didn't say so, because I figured no one else would be interested." "Did you say his name was Eddie?" Caroline asked.
Cherish looked over at Caroline.
"You wouldn't like him." "I just asked his name, that's all." "Yes, it's Eddie." "Why wouldn't I like him? How old is he?" "Older than you are by a little bit, I think, and you would not be interested in him." "Why wouldn't I be?" she repeated. "Not your type." "Oh, I have a type, do I? And you'd know what that is?"
"What time does all this take place, Cherish?" Adaa asked.
"Late in the afternoon tomorrow. He said to come between 3 and 4.
"I think all you girls need a break," Adaa announced. "It wouldn't hurt for you all to go." Caroline and Favor smiled at one another. They were obviously pleased to go.
"Can't I just go by myself?" Cherish whined. "No," Favor said, "because Caroline and I want to go too. And you do too, don't you, Hope?"
"I could stay and work in the shop. It's not that busy on a Monday afternoon normally, and we'll only need one." "Nonsense. I'll work in the store. You girls need something else to think about rather than worrying about Levi."
"Thanks so much, Adaa," Caroline said.
Hope and Cherish smiled at one another. Then Cherish looked at Adaa, who smiled back, and then announced, "And Cherish, for trying to be selfish just now, you can do the whole cleanup in the kitchen tonight by yourself." This wasn't part of the plan. Adaa had gone rogue.
"What?" Cherish asked. "The washing and the wiping as well?"
"Yeah, there's not that much. Only plates." Cherish breathed out heavily. Just when she was thinking Adaa wasn't too bad, she found out she was.
"Before I do that, can I give Eddie a quick call to tell him that 3 of us are coming?"
"Very good. And then you can do a day's worth of chores before you go tomorrow as well."
"Okay."
Cherish raced outside to the phone in the barn and called Eddie's cell phone. He answered almost immediately. Chapter 24. When Eddie answered, Cherish did her best to calm her breathing.
Good news! The plan is already in place.
She's coming?
Yes.
It's a dream come true, he said.
Just be sure it doesn't turn into a nightmare.
How could it? Eddie asked.
Very easily. You have to follow my plan exactly.
I know. I won't let her know I find her attractive. I won't mention I follow her on social media. I won't let her know I've seen her videos, and I won't pay her any mind.
That's right. Practically ignore her. Don't stare at her, and definitely don't smile at her.
Are you sure? I thought women liked nice guys. Cherish sighed. She'd been through all this with him at the cafe. It was tiresome having to repeat herself.
Some do, I guess, but Caroline's used to men giving her a lot of attention and looking at her all the time. It'll drive her crazy if you don't give her a second glance.
It'll be hard, but I'm willing to give it a go. Cherish let out a long, drawn-out breath.
Good.
Then she thought she should try to be more enthusiastic.
I can't wait for tomorrow.
Me either. I've got suits ready for you all. Cherish's lips turned down at the corners. She'd forgotten the plan involved getting close to the bees. With all the bees in the orchard, she'd never been stung. She hoped tomorrow wasn't the day. And she hoped she wasn't allergic. Later that evening, Adaa came into the kitchen while Cherish was up to her elbows in soapy dishwater.
Adaa, me doing dishes wasn't part of the plan.
Adaa chuckled. I'm teaching you a lesson. I said that no good comes out of deception. Cherish made a face.
Yes, but you were in on it too.
Not entirely. I just came in to ask you to put the tea kettle on after you finish the washing up.
Fine.
Thank you, Adaa said cheerfully before she left the kitchen. If Adaa was going to play that game, Cherish had to think of a way to get back at her. But what to do? Hope walked in right then. Want some help?
Are you kidding? Of course I do.
Hope picked up a dish towel.
I need to think of a way to get back at Adaa. Play a prank on her or a joke.
Cherish told her what happened. Adaa knew what you were doing and she agreed with it? Hope asked.
That's right, and she helped. You heard all the things she said. She was playing along.
What kind of a prank were you thinking?
I don't know. It was over the visit to the bees, so...
Give her a jar of honey and replace it with maple syrup. Cherish shook her head. Nay, pretend you've been stung by a bee. Cherish made a face.
She wouldn't care. Don't worry, I'll think of something by myself.
I'm sorry, I'm just not good at this sort of stuff.
Nay, you're not.
Chapter 25. On Monday morning, Florence was back at the orchard and ready for work. Cherish pulled her work boots on while Favor and the other girls stood around. Standing outside the house, Adaa told Florence, I suggested they write a list of everything they need for the shop and the quantities. That's a good idea. Favor, you can be in charge of that.
But how will I know what's needed?
Florence said, figure it out. Go down to the store now and write down what there is and how many of each. Between you and the girls, you should be able to figure out how much is sold of everything in a week.
I'll try.
That's all we ask, said Adaa, as she pushed Favor toward the shop. Hope and Caroline went with her. Cherish looked up at the sky.
It's a hot day. I'll need my hat, and I can't find it. I'll look up in my room.
Cherish walked away. It's a good idea of yours, Adaa. Otherwise, it's all just guesswork. That's what I always did. Saw what we were running low on and had the girls or Mom make them as we ran low. But we always had so much canned and preserved food. Do they still have a lot? Look for yourself. It's all there in the utility room. Florence opened the door of the utility room, which was off from the laundry room, to see barely half the supply of what they normally had when she had been managing things. That meant they had gradually used or sold things and weren't replacing them fast enough. She'd feared things would run down after she left. Both the household and the orchard were going to ruin. She ran her hand along one of the shelves and looked at her fingers. They were black. 2 years' worth of dirt on her fingers. She brushed it off her fingers with her other hand. Wilma had been lazy, and she'd allowed the girls to be lazy. She headed back outside the house where Adaa was sweeping the porch. Adaa stopped sweeping and looked up at Florence. "I've let them go to visit the beekeeper this afternoon." "The girls?" "Yeah, Eddie is going to show them around the beehives." "We often see Eddie when we're buying honey from the stall in front of their house. I'm pleased they're doing that, but is there any special reason they're going there today when they should be working?" "Eddie asked them, and I thought they should be neighborly. And we do need the bees for the apple trees." "Are they all going?" "Yeah, I said they could. I thought they needed a break." Florence shook her head, fuming inside. "This is unbelievable. I've come here to help, left my baby at home, and now everyone's leaving. Sunday is the day to take time off, not Monday." "I'm sorry, Florence. I'm doing my best. But when Cherish asked, she didn't let up." "Oh, it was her idea?" Adaa nodded. "I know how persuasive she can be. They'll have to work so much harder this morning and again tomorrow. Don't worry, Florence. I'll see that they do." Bliss sat on one side of Levi's bed and Wilma on the other. Levi's eyes flickered open. Wilma jumped up and leaned over him. "You were sleeping when the doctor did his rounds. He said you can go home Wednesday if you're still doing well. That's just 2 more days." "I'm not going home to the orchard. It's not my home anymore." Wilma opened her eyes wide, glanced at Bliss, who seemed just as confused, and then she looked back at Levi. "You can't be serious." "I am. The orchard belongs to Florence." Wilma rubbed her forehead. "Florence is helping us with the orchard. She asked if she could, and I said yes. I think she's happy with that." "The orchard is hers. She can do what she wants." Bliss couldn't keep quiet any longer. "Is that what we're going to do? Just let her take over the orchard?" "Yeah," Levi said. "She has offered to buy it." "And why should she buy her own orchard, Wilma?" "It can be a token payment. Something for the years we've worked on it." "We made money out of it. We have allowed it to suffer. I had no knowledge, and your daughters had no interest in helping. They don't care." Bliss felt bad. She could have worked more, but it was hard to do that when no one else was. She hadn't grown up in the orchard like they had. "If they are lazy, it's our fault for not telling them what to do and pushing them harder to make them do things." Levi put his hands on his stomach and interlaced his fingers. "It's a mess. I married into a mess." "Don't worry about it now. Just concentrate on getting well." Wilma patted his shoulder. "How can I relax and forget about it when I don't even know where I'm going when I get out of here? Or should I ask if I can stay here forever? This is more a home to me now than the Baker apple orchard ever was. I was there living on her orchard." Bliss looked down and kept silent. She wanted to help, but nothing she could do or even say would help. If her father was refusing to go back to the orchard, where would they all live? And that was Wilma's very next question. "Where do we live, then, if we don't live at the orchard?" Levi closed his eyes, and then his breathing became deeper. "I think he's falling asleep, Mom." "I'm sorry you heard all that. It wasn't nice." "It's okay." Through tear-filled eyes, Wilma asked, "What is the solution?" Bliss nervously twirled her cup strings around her finger. "Perhaps we should look for a house to lease. Maybe. Dot has 2 houses, but people are living in them. One of them is Joy and Isaac's house." "I know. We need a big house. We can't put those people out." "No, of course we can't." Bliss took a deep breath, thinking how many things they'd need to move. It would take days, and many wagons full of items. "How are we going to all fit into one home? We've got the horses, the chickens, the dog, my rabbit, and the barn cats. Oh, and Timmy.
The owl's not going to like to leave the barn. Can we take it too?
It's a wild owl. Of course we can't take it with us.
I really don't want to leave. I've gotten so used to it and working at the shop. It's such fun. We're never going to find another house like it. Not one with a shop out the front.
I know. I've lived there most of my adult life. I don't want to leave it either. We just have to pray that God sends us a miracle. Bliss leaned closer and whispered,
Or that Dot changes his mind.
Wilma slowly nodded. I'll call home and let everyone know he might be home on Wednesday. We'll need to move Adaa upstairs. It'll be better if your father has a downstairs bedroom for now.
It would.
And there's a surprise waiting for you at home.
For me?
Yeah.
What is it?
Bliss asked. You'll have to wait and see.
Is it from Adam?
When Wilma nodded, Bliss hoped it was the enclosure for Cotton Ball. He'd said he'd make her one. She couldn't have a better boyfriend than Adam. Chapter 26. Hope drove the girls to Eddie's place, and they spotted Eddie near a large barn. He was already in his beekeeper clothes, all but the headgear. Hope wasn't staying, so she stopped to let the girls out, waved to Eddie, and wasted no time in heading home. Cherish introduced Caroline to Eddie, and Caroline handed him 2 apple pies she'd made. His face lit up, and he thanked her for the pies. Then he set them down and started talking to Favor. Cherish could see the lack of attention annoyed Caroline. It seemed Caroline expected every man to be transfixed by her beauty. Cherish's plan was working perfectly. Now, I've got suits for you all. Is it only the 3 of you? Eddie looked around at them. No one else coming?
Yes, only us 3. Hope was coming, but she changed her mind.
No matter. He handed out the suits. Slip these on over your clothes.
Do you have one in pink?
Caroline giggled and tossed her long hair over one shoulder, and then fluttered her dark lashes. No, only white, and that's because you'd attract too much attention if the suits were pink. The bees would be all over you.
Oh, I don't want that. I don't want bees attracted to me.
He ignored her comment and waited until they were dressed. Then he took them to the long rows of hives, all the while telling them about the different kinds of bees.
Can I hear buzzing?
Favor asked. Yeah, the bees' wings vibrate around 200 times per second and create that sound.
Oh, I never knew, Caroline said. What else can you tell us?
They don't sleep. They stop and conserve energy, but they don't sleep.
I wish I didn't have to sleep. I wouldn't if I didn't have to.
Eddie ignored her.
I hope I don't get stung, she said.
They're using bee venom now to treat things like arthritis and high blood pressure, and honey has antibacterial properties.
Oh, well, I'm too young to be worried about that.
Caroline giggled again, and by this time she was walking close to him, having swapped places with Favor. Also, another good thing about honey is that it contains every nutrient a person would need to survive. So, in theory, you could live off honey.
I'm still worried about getting stung.
Caroline looked up at him as they walked. He continued, You might want to feel sorry for the bee if you get stung. You'll recover, but the bee will die. The queen's the only one that can survive after stinging.
Is that right?
Cherish thought she should say something to sound like she was interested. Yes, and a lot of people find this interesting. It takes 10 pounds of pollen to produce a pound of honey.
Oh, you know so much, Eddie,
Cherish said. I should know a lot. I'd be in trouble if I didn't. Caroline giggled loudly. She was really trying hard, Cherish noticed. What he'd said wasn't even funny. Once they got closer, he had them put on their hats, which were like helmets with nets over the front. Then he got them to stand close to a hive while he pulled out a section. They saw the honey, the bees, and the honeycombed sections of beeswax. He scraped some honey into a bottle to show them how it was done. In a good year, he told them, We can get 80 to 90 pounds of honey from one of these hives.
And I've heard that the flavor of the honey is determined by what flowers the bees have visited. Is that right?
Asked Caroline. He smiled at her. That's right. Cherish cleared her throat loudly. She had told him not to be nice to her. The smile left his face, and he turned his attention back to the bees. Bees only live 6 to 8 weeks, he stated flatly.
Oh, that's so sad,
Favor said. The queen lives longer, maybe 2 to 3 years. Then he went on to explain the difference between propolis, pollen, and royal jelly. Cherish's head was spinning, but Caroline's eyes were fixed on Eddie.
I never realized how fascinating bees are. They are so clever. I cannot believe it.
Cherish had never seen Caroline so animated. They are, and what's more, the bees are born not knowing what to do. It's not an instinct, I mean. The older ones have to teach them. Cherish screwed up her nose.
How would you know that?
He looked at her, taking his eyes off Caroline for a moment. That's what the research says. I just go along with it. It seems to be true, though, from what I've seen. Caroline flipped her hair over her shoulder and then smoothed it down with her hand.
Eddie, what you need to do is to show people around here and tell them all about the bees, just like what you're doing with us, and they'll pay you for it.
Eddie rubbed the back of his neck. Do you think so? We have talked about it.
For sure. People would pay for this experience, said Cherish. You could do tours of the apple orchard as well, Cherish. I could organize these tours for you both for a slight fee.
Caroline clapped her hands together and jumped up and down.
This could be my new business. I was looking for something to do. Wait a minute. I do tours for school children. That's something Florence started, and we'll never charge for it. All right then, just don't charge the children. But charge everybody else. City folks would love to know about bees and about how an apple orchard works. All they see is a bottle of honey on the supermarket shelves and the apples on display.
Maybe, Cherish said, while wondering how much work it would be. Or more importantly, what other work it would get her out of. She enjoyed escorting the tours.
I could make a website, and the people could book on the website, and I'll arrange everything. You don't have to worry about a thing. Especially you, Cherish, because you can't use a computer or anything. That's not exactly true. I can use one. I just can't have one in the house. I can use one at the library. No need to go all technically technical on me with all your Amish rules. You know what I meant. It will make more money for you, Eddie, and more money for your orchard, Cherish. I guess that's true. And I do like showing people everything. That's wonderful. And Eddie, I suppose you'll have to ask your father?
Yeah, we need to think about it.
We can have a few different packages. The real beekeeper experience, when you have people do certain things by themselves, get real close up with the bees, and then you can have the tamer experience for others who are more timid.
I don't know if it'll work. We're on call a lot.
What are you on call for?
Hive removal. When Caroline looked confused, he explained, if someone has a beehive they found in the yard or on the side of the house, and they need it removed rather than killing the bees, who are they going to call? Me. Just to make things more difficult, sometimes we can't do it in one day. It can take a few days.
Oh, that is wonderful. Do you think that I could shoot you doing that?
He raised his arms over his head. Don't shoot. The girls laughed at him.
You know what I mean, silly, with my phone. I could even get a better camera to take movies. That would be great on my YouTube channel.
I don't know. Your YouTube channel, did you say? Cherish smiled at him, acting as though he didn't know anything about her.
Well, I could fix you up with your own channel, and then you could load up the movies I take. Do you have one already?
No.
That would be brilliant. I could do trailers for this place. And the same for you with the apple orchard, Cherish. I'm so excited. This gives me a new purpose in life and a new direction.
This wasn't the plan Cherish had in mind. Caroline was supposed to fall in love with Eddie. Yes, but how are you going to do that when you move home? Aren't you visiting? Eddie asked.
I could move here. Well, to the area. I can't stay with Mr. and Mrs. Brunner forever.
Cherish was relieved to hear her say that. The look on Cherish's face must have said it all, because Caroline saw it and said,
"Don't worry, I won't be living at the house forever. I'll move out." "I'll move out with you," said Favor.
Cherish was upset by that. Favor had often said she'd move to the farm with her. Now Cherish regretted trying to set Caroline up with Eddie. The whole thing had backfired in so many ways.
"Sounds like a great idea,"
Cherish said with as much enthusiasm as she could fake, which wasn't much.
"I don't think you should do any more movies of us, thanks very much, but do what you want with the bees if it's okay with Eddie." "Thanks, Cherish, but I don't need your permission to do or not do anything."
Eddie raised his eyebrows. Apparently he was seeing what Caroline was really like.
"Eddie, we should get together to talk about things."
Eddie looked over at Cherish, who frowned. "Maybe. I can give you a call after I talk to my father. I need to see what he thinks about it."
"Sure."
"How much money do you think could be made out of it?" he asked.
"I'm not sure. I'll have to do some research. I'll look into it."
Then they saw Hope coming toward them in the buggy. Cherish gasped.
"Oh no, I hope everything's all right. She's not due back now."
"I know, we haven't even had our refreshments."
"I'll go see what's wrong."
Cherish went over to the buggy and then came back a minute later.
"I have to go. The rest of you can stay."
"Everything okay, Cherish?" Eddie asked.
"Yes, I just have to help Adaa with something. Hope said she'd come back."
"No, it's okay. I can drive them back when we're done. I have arranged refreshments for us after this."
"Are you sure?"
"Yeah, of course."
"Thanks. I better go."
Cherish walked quickly to the buggy and climbed in. "What happened?" asked Hope.
"Everything went well, and you're right on time. And the best thing yet, Eddie said he'd drive the other girls home."
"Good." Cherish looked back and saw Eddie leaning against the barn as the two girls talked to him. Then Cherish laughed.
"You should see her face."
"Does she like him?"
"She does."
As soon as Eddie and Caroline became boyfriend and girlfriend, it would be a perfect time for Cherish to contact Daniel. He said he would wait for her call. She hoped she wouldn't have to wait too long. Chapter 27. When the doctor saw Levi on Tuesday morning, Levi opened his eyes and then tried to sit up in the bed. "How are you feeling today?" the doctor asked. "Feeling like I want to go home." Wilma and Bliss exchanged looks. That was a change. They waited for him to say more. "We need to keep an eye on you for today, and after I see you tomorrow, I'll let you go if there's nothing else that crops up." "Then I can go home?" "Yes." "Good. Thank you. So far, everything's looking okay. We'll give you a program before you leave and put you on low doses of aspirin."
"What caused it?" asked Bliss.
"Could be any number of things. Sometimes the causes aren't always apparent. It could be diet, lack of exercise, stress. A dietitian and a physical therapist will visit you later today. You've been walking about?" "A little, but I'm too tired to walk much," said Levi. "Are you? That stent we talked about would help with that." Levi looked at him as if he was too tired to answer, giving a little headshake to reiterate his unwillingness to do that. "Okay. Let's see how you feel tomorrow. Do you have any other questions?" He looked at all of them.
"No, I don't," Bliss said. "I've asked all the questions I had."
Wilma just shook her head. The doctor then looked back at the chart and made a couple of notations before he placed the chart back at the end of the bed and walked out.
"That's good, isn't it, Dot? You can go home soon."
He didn't answer because he was focused on Wilma. "Did you sort things out, Wilma?" "I'm working on it, and when you're feeling better, I'll talk things over with you." "You sort it out." Bliss saw the fear in Wilma's eyes. It was a hard situation. If she couldn't talk things over with her husband, how would she know she was making the right decision? Levi's attention turned to Bliss. "You go home. I'll be all right. The doctor doesn't think I'm going to die. There's no need to stay."
"I'm staying here."
Bliss pressed her lips together. He turned his head toward Wilma. "Will you go home? I worry about you having no sleep." Wilma nodded. "I'll go home tonight if you're upset about it." "Denke." His eyes closed. They both watched him, and when they saw his chest rising and falling, they knew he'd fallen asleep.
"Has he forgotten what he said earlier about not wanting to go home?"
Bliss whispered. "It seems so. I hope he hasn't lost his memory."
"What if he's got brain damage?"
"I don't know. Is it our miracle, maybe, that he's forgotten what he said before?" Bliss nibbled on a fingernail.
"It could be."
Chapter 28. Florence found out Levi was most likely coming home on Wednesday, so she told Adaa she wouldn't work in the orchard that day. She'd wait until Wilma told Levi she was helping out. That was best for everybody. When Florence was walking home on Tuesday afternoon, she got a call from Carter saying he was going to collect Wilma from the hospital and take Iris for the drive. She came home to an empty house, kicked off her work boots at the door, and then she flopped down on the couch. All she'd ever wanted was the orchard. She'd prayed for it to be hers nearly every day. Was it possible to find any middle ground? It didn't feel right to take it, even if she could. Her father always meant the family to live in the home forever, and the orchard to provide an income. Whether she liked it or not, Levi was a branch of her family tree now. Wilma would always be the only mother she remembered, no matter how much she longed for her mother. But she couldn't feel sorry for herself, not when she had been blessed with a family of her own. Levi came home on Wednesday, around midday. Bliss saw the enclosure, and both Levi and Wilma didn't mind the location, close to the barn. She couldn't wait until she saw Adam again to thank him for it. It was a perfect size. As soon as her father was settled on the couch, she hurried to get cotton ball so she could try it out. She would have sunlight and fresh air, and she could nibble on grass. It was perfect. That night, Adaa, Samuel, and the family sat in the living room with their dinner plates balanced on their knees. Levi reclined with his feet up on the couch, looking happy to be home. Wilma told everyone, "Levi has to have exercise sessions for 12 weeks, 3 times a week. Someone will be coming to the house for that. He also can't eat any big meals. Little and often, they said." Levi put up his hand. "Enough about that, Wilma. I'll do it all. But I've had enough of hearing what I should and shouldn't do. What have you girls been doing?" Caroline spoke first.
"We went to the beekeeper's place over the back. Eddie and... what's his father's name?"
Caroline asked Favor.
"Howard Evans."
"Yeah, I know them," Levi said.
"We had a lot of fun and learned so many fascinating things. I didn't think I'd enjoy myself so much."
Cherish smirked. Caroline liked the visit because of Eddie. A romance was in the air. "What did you learn?" Levi asked. Caroline set her fork down on her plate.
"I've always heard about royal jelly, but I never knew what it was. That's what the queen bee eats. Bees use propolis that they get from trees to fill in cracks in their hives. The beeswax comes from their stomach. I never knew. I'll never look at candles in the same way."
"Who went there?" Levi asked.
"All of us," Cherish said, "except not Hope."
He looked at Hope. "I stayed to help Adaa," she told him. "She did a good job. All the girls did good while you were away, Levi," Adaa said. Levi smiled. Then he said to Bliss, "See what you missed out on? A visit to the bees."
"I can take her back there when I visit Eddie. We're putting together some tours to his place. He'll make money from showing people around as well as from the sales of honey. I told Cherish she should do that for the orchard, too."
"Levi doesn't need to hear about that now," Cherish told her.
"Okay, I'm just saying."
"The shop's done well," Hope told Levi. "Good." Favor finally spoke.
Also, going back to the bees make their hexagonal shape out of beeswax because that shape is the best to conserve the... What was it again, Caroline? I forget. Cherish? I forget too. Oh, it was interesting. I'll have to ask Eddie when I see him again,
Favor said. Caroline nearly jumped out of her seat.
You're seeing him? When will that be? I don't know.
When Samuel started talking to Levi, Caroline whispered to Favor,
Are you sure you didn't arrange anything with Eddie?
Favor screwed up her nose.
Of course I didn't. I tell you about everything. Good.
Cherish, a letter came for you today, Mom said once all conversations had stopped.
Oh, you're just telling me now?
Yeah, I have had a bit going on. Levi frowned at Cherish, making her feel bad for speaking to her mother like that.
I'm sorry, Mom.
That's okay.
Who's the letter from?
It's from Malachi.
Oh. You look surprised, Cherish. Who did you think it was from?
Caroline asked.
I have pen pals too. Favor isn't the only one. It might have been from one of them.
When everyone was finished, Cherish helped Adaa and Mom take everyone's plates to the kitchen. Cherish still hadn't thought up a way to get back at Adaa, but she would. She had a couple of ideas. As they scraped food off their plates, Wilma told Adaa, Levi wants to see Florence to make a decision about the orchard.
What will happen?
Adaa asked. I don't know. I'll talk to her tomorrow and see.
Do you want me to come with you, Mom?
Cherish offered. Nay, best I go by myself.
Okay.
I'll get the other girls to do the washing up. You go read your letter, Cherish.
Are you sure?
Go on. Send Favor and Caroline here. Cherish smiled.
Gladly.
Cherish wiped her hands off and then grabbed the letter that was on the counter. She hurried out to the living room, told the girls they were needed in the kitchen, and then hurried up the stairs. Once she'd closed herself in the bedroom, she lay down on the bed and ripped open the envelope. As she unfolded the one-page letter, she remembered she'd told him about the will and what Wilma had done. She sure hoped he destroyed that letter and kept quiet about it. Something told her she could trust him. She looked at his dreadful writing and was disappointed the letter was so short. Why even bother to go to the trouble of posting such a short letter? It was more of a note rather than a letter. All it said was how the farm was doing. Nothing about what she'd told him. He didn't even mention the will or say how dreadful her mother was. Maybe he thought she was dreadful for telling him private things about her family. Cherish sat upright and held her stomach. She shouldn't have mentioned anything. Malachi had nothing to do with her family. She should have kept quiet. Now she felt bad. She got up and pulled a sheet of paper and her Bible out of the top drawer of her chest, and after she grabbed a pen, she sat on the floor and used her bed as her desk. She slid her Bible under the page and began to write. Firstly, she thanked him for giving her an update on the farm. Then she said she was sorry that she'd told him all those things, and to put them out of his mind. She went on to tell him that she was just upset and was simply venting. Cherish bit her lip and silently read the letter back. It wasn't right. She ripped it in two. Why should she apologize to him? It had nothing to do with him. If he was rude enough not to mention what she'd written about, or offer his opinion and sympathy, then she wouldn't write back at all. She didn't need to. He was working for her. All she had asked him for were updates. It wasn't as though they were friends. Cherish felt good about her decision not to write back. She'd only written that other letter to him because she was lonely, and that was all Caroline's fault for taking her sister away from her. Now that Bliss was back from the hospital, Cherish felt a whole lot better. With the letter scrunched in her hand, she headed downstairs to be with her family. There will be some changes around here, Levi announced. A hush of silence fell over the room, and Cherish sat on the bottom step.
What changes, Mr. Brunner? Caroline asked.
The orchard belongs to Florence.
What?
Adaa screeched.
What are you talking about, Levi? The orchard doesn't belong to Florence. She left the community ages ago."
Then Adaa looked worried and looked at Wilma. Cherish could see that Adaa was convinced Levi was losing his mind. "It's true," Mom said. "There was a will, and it recently was discovered."
"You mean Florence does own the orchard?" Adaa asked.
Surely Mom had told Adaa everything. Why was she looking so surprised?
"It can't be right," Samuel said.
"Do we have to move?" asked Favor. Wilma shook her head.
"We're working something out with her." "Wilma is working things out," Levi said. "Is there dessert?"
It was all out in the open now. What would happen? Wilma hurried out to the kitchen, looking as though she was in tears, and Adaa hurried after her. Samuel frowned, and then caught sight of Cherish.
"Cherish, come sit over here with us."
Cherish moved closer and sat down opposite Samuel. She forced a smile. The tension in the room was fierce.
"After our talk the other day over the cider, I called Stephen and asked him what some of his jokes were."
"Oh." She hoped he wasn't going to tell them.
"And do you remember them?"
Levi said,
"Yeah, we need some jokes, and then we'll have a Bible reading after dessert. Do you know, I'm so good at cutting down trees, I can do it just by looking at them."
"How?" asked Favor.
"I saw them with my own eyes."
Levi and Samuel chuckled. Cherish forced a smile. Caroline and Favor just looked at each other, and Hope looked confused. He went again.
"What kind of tree can you fit in your hand?"
"I've heard this one," Hope said. "A palm tree."
"That's right. One more, and I don't remember the rest. I liked these ones because they're about trees. How do you know if a tree is a dogwood tree?"
"By the bark," Hope said. Levi and Samuel laughed.
"Thanks for finding out those jokes, Samuel. It was good of you. We all needed a laugh."
Cherish smiled at him, hoping that was the end of them. It was. Once they'd eaten dessert and Adaa and Samuel had gone home, Cherish walked up to her room, about to throw herself on her bed, when she noticed something had fallen between the bed and her nightstand. She got down on all fours and pulled it out. It was the letter she'd written to Malachi several days ago, where she told him about her mother hiding the will. It was never sent. Malachi wasn't awful at all. She sat down on the bed. Malachi had written to her twice without waiting for her to write back. He must have thought that she ignored his last letter, but he still wrote again. She was the rude one, and not him. Now she felt bad for thinking all those things. Chapter 29. The very next day, in an effort to work things out with Florence, Wilma sat in Carter and Florence's living room. "Florence, Levi's happy to hand the farm over, but what can we do? We need an income. Shall we work on the farm for you? How about I manage the farm?" Wilma's face soured.
"You'll tell Levi what to do?"
"Yes."
"I don't know if he'd like that."
"What if I'm telling the girls what to do then?"
"That might work. The farm should be signed over to you. That's what Levi wants. I know it."
"Sign it over to me then, and you can live there and keep the profits."
"Nay."
Wilma's shoulders rounded.
"Levi would never agree to getting something for nothing."
"It wouldn't be for nothing, because the girls would be working. It'll help me too, because if your orchard stays healthy, my orchards on either side won't suffer."
"Nay, it has to be more in your favor than that."
Carter said, "It'll be in Florence's name. That's all she wants. And for it to be run properly, no pests and things like that," Florence added.
"And Levi wants what's fair, and I have to fix my mistake."
Carter explained, "This will be righting the wrong. Florence's father just wanted everyone to have a home. He knew that Florence wouldn't keep the money for herself or sell the orchard. It's for the family, and she would have kept it that way. Now I can provide for her, so she doesn't need to take any money from the orchard, and she doesn't want to.
Shall I come and explain that to Levi? Florence asked Wilma.
Nay, I'll do it and see what he says. Adaa and Samuel are coming for dinner tonight. Would you like to join us and talk to him after the meal?
No. Florence shook her head. We will talk to him in a few days.
When he's recovered a little more and you've both had a little more time to think everything over, Carter said. Very well. We have no conclusion, then. Is that what I'm to tell Levi? But we have some options. We just want to be fair to everyone, Carter said. The four of us need to sit down and talk. The main thing Florence is concerned about is the state of the orchard. Is that right?
He looked at his wife, and she nodded.
I'll be happy to go back and tell him you want him involved. He keeps telling me to fix things, but it involves him as well.
I should go. Wilma smiled.
Might I have a look at Iris first? I won't wake her.
Of course you can.
Florence walked upstairs with her, and Wilma stared at Iris as she slept. She had her arms either side of her face, looking utterly adorable. Wilma looked over at Florence and smiled once more. Then they both headed downstairs. Carter and Florence hugged Wilma goodbye, and then she left. When they closed the door, Florence felt awful. I feel as though I don't want it now. It's caused so much unhappiness. Maybe it would have been better to leave things as they were. Carter pulled her into him. And that's just one of the reasons why I love you. I was worried that you were going to be ruthless and become someone else.
What are you talking about?
I saw something in your eyes that scared me. I thought I'd lost you. A wall came up.
Don't be silly. Really?
Yes. He pointed to himself. This is your future. Me and Iris, not the orchard. She looked into his dark hazel eyes, feeling all the love he had for her. Then he kissed her softly. Never forget that. His whispered words tickled her neck.
I know, it's true. The orchard is just some trees and some land that I once lived on.
She sighed. It's not my father or my link to him, although that's still what it feels like. Her eyes filled with tears, and he put his arms around her, and she sobbed on his shoulder.
I miss him so much.
I know. He kissed the top of her head. I miss some people too, my mother and father. I know what it's like. You were so close to him. She was safe in his arms. In his arms, she was home. Home wasn't a building or a piece of land. She knew that now. I just want everyone to be happy. Things next door should stay the same. It seems you've got to convince Levi and Wilma of that now. Why is everything so hard, Carter? He chuckled. It can get complicated when people are involved. That's why I like technology. It's predictable. I'll talk to Levi when he recovers a little more. I'll come with you if you want, he offered. I think it's something I'll have to do by myself. The orchard had been within her grasp, and she could have taken it if she'd pushed. There were things more important. People. She'd be happy to tell Wilma and Levi to forget the whole thing and leave everything the way it was. But she knew Levi had to be satisfied that everything was fair for everyone. Now Florence thought of Levi in a new light. That night, Adaa and Samuel were there again, having dinner with Wilma, Levi, and the girls. They sat in the living room with their meals on their laps, keeping Levi company from his position on the couch.
I've got a good idea,
Cherish said, over her dessert of apple pie with whipped cream.
This'll be good,
Caroline said. Cherish couldn't help making a face at Caroline. Why did she have to be so mean and sarcastic? And why didn't anyone tell her to stop? What is it, Cherish? Mom asked.
Adaa and Samuel, you like to travel around the countryside. You're always going here and there. Why don't you take me back to the farm?
Oh, Cherish, we're too busy and have too much happening for you to go away now, Mom said. That was just the reply she'd expected.
Well, would you at some stage, Adaa, in the future?
She looked at Samuel.
Please, Samuel?
We'll see, Adaa said.
That means no. I don't see why not.
It's funny you liked your aunt so much, Adaa said. Not meaning to be rude, but she was quite an austere and unapproachable woman. Every time she came here, she found fault with everything and everyone. She even told your father everything he wasn't doing right.
That's why I was sent there, as punishment.
Cherish was surprised at Ada's remarks. She normally never spoke negatively about people unless it was privately to Mom when she thought no one could hear. Ada's eyes opened wide. So you really got along with her?
Yeah.
Cherish got up, excusing herself from the room. Several minutes later, Adaa walked into the kitchen to make the after-dinner hot tea and coffees. Take Cherish to the farm. Adaa stopped still, turned around, and stared wide-eyed at Timmy. There was no one else in the room. Had the bird just talked to her? She put the tea kettle down and walked closer and stared at the blue budgerigar. He stared back and blinked his little dark eyes, then put his head to one side. What did you just say? Adaa whispered. The bird was silent. Then he walked across his perch, tipped his head to the other side, moved onto the edge of the cage, and clung onto it. Who's a pretty bird? Who's a pretty bird? Adaa tried to get the bird to talk again, but nothing happened. Thinking it must have been her imagination, she headed back to the stove. Then the bird squeaked, "Take Cherish to the farm." Adaa swung around and rushed back to Timmy. "Say it again. Take Cherish to the farm." The bird just looked at her. Adaa leaned down so she was face to beak with the bird. "Take Cherish to the farm," Adaa repeated in her best bird-like voice. Then Adaa noticed the curtain behind the cage move. She flung the curtain aside to see Cherish, hands clasped over her mouth and shaking with laughter, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You little—" Cherish ran outside into the dark night with Adaa chasing her. Cherish tried to make it to the orchard, knowing Adaa wouldn't be able to follow too far, but she couldn't get there. She was laughing too hard to even walk, and she collapsed on the ground, holding her stomach. It was the funniest thing Cherish had ever seen or heard. Thankfully, Adaa had also found it funny. She dropped to her knees beside Cherish and joined in her laughter. Cherish had got Adaa good. This has been The Cost of Lies, The Amish Bonnet Sisters, Book 13, written by Samantha Price, narrated by Stephanie Dillard. Copyright 2020 by Samantha Price. Production copyright 2020 by Samantha Price.